Bonjour tout le monde. Good morning, everyone. Bienvenue. As we begin our meeting today and on behalf of Ottawa City Council, I wish to acknowledge that Ottawa is built on unceded Anishinaabe-Algonquin territory. Les peuples de la nation Algonquin-Anishinaabe vivent sur ce territoire.
The peoples of the Anishinaabe-Algonquin Nation have lived on this territory for millennia. Their culture and presence have nurtured and continue to nurture this land. The City of Ottawa honors the peoples and land of the Anishinaabe-Algonquin Nation. The City of Ottawa honors all First Nations, Inuit, and Métis peoples and their valuable past and present contribution to this land.
Rise for a moment of personal reflection. Thank you. Merci. Please remain standing for the playing of our national anthem. Thank you. Merci. I'll ask now for the roll call.
Councillor Luloff.
Good morning.
Councillor Dudas.
Present.
Councillor Hill.
Present.
Councillor Curry.
Here.
Councillor Kelly.
Present.
Councillor Gower.
Here.
Councillor Kavanaugh.
Present.
Councillor Johnson. Councillor Devine.
Here.
Councillor Bradley.
Here.
Councillor Tierney.
Present.
Conseillère Plante.
Allô.
Councillor King.
Here.
Councillor Troster.
Here.
Councillor Leeper.
Here.
Councillor Brockington.
Here.
Councillor Menard.
Here.
Councillor Carr.
Here.
Councillor Kitts.
Here.
Councillor Skalski.
Here.
Councillor Brown.
Here.
Conseiller Desroches.
Here.
Councillor Hubley.
Here.
Councillor Lowe.
Here.
Mayor Sutcliffe.
Here.
Mr. Mayor, we have quorum.
Thank you. Confirmation of minutes from the council meeting on February the 11th, including the confidential minutes. Are those carried? Are there any declarations of interest? I'll note the communications on the agenda. Councillor Johnson did advise she would be absent. Motion to introduce reports. Councillor Leeper.
Thank you, Mayor. That the Ottawa Public Library Board entitled Hunt Club Branch Lease Agreement Built Heritage Committee Report 29A, Committee of Revision Report 1, Emergency Preparedness and Protective Services Committee Report 21, Environment and Climate Change Committee Report 22, Joint Planning and Housing Committee and Agriculture and Rural Affairs Committee Report 8, Planning and Housing Committee Report 60, Transit Committee Report 23, and the reports from the City Clerk entitled Status Update, Council Inquiries and Motions for the period ending February 20th, 2026, and summary of oral and written public submissions for items subject to the Planning Act explanation requirements at the City Council meeting of February 11th, 2026 be received and considered.
Is that carried? Item 10.1 is the official plan amendment and zoning bylaw amendment for 951 Gladstone and 145 Loretta, and there is a motion to refer that back to Planning and Housing Committee. Councillor Leeper, did you want to introduce that?
Yeah, thank you very much, Mayor. So this file, there are some outstanding questions around the benefits. It raises a number of procedural complexities with respect to trying to pass this today. So I would ask for support to send this back to staff to a future planning committee meeting. Whereas the owner of 951 Gladstone Avenue and 145 Loretta Avenue North submitted a letter to staff indicating a request to remove the monetary contributions related to affordable housing and the Laurel Street active transportation bridge, as the other contributions being provided still exceed the current community benefits bylaw. And whereas the owner has indicated that removal of the two monetary contributions in the amount of $1 million each for a total of $2 million, subject to indexing, are required to start construction of the first tower development that contains approximately 350 dwelling units. And whereas this request may result in changes to the staff report and or the report recommendations, therefore be it resolved that the report be referred to a future meeting of the Planning and Housing Committee at the earliest opportunity where feasible for consideration, and be it further resolved that staff be permitted to include, if necessary, a revised staff support and or supporting documentation for inclusion in the distribution of the meeting agenda with appropriate notice provided.
Thank you, Councillor Leeper. Is that carried? Item 11.1 is the Hunt Club branch lease agreement. Is that carried? 12.1 is the status update on council inquiries and motions for the period ending February 20th. Is that received? From Built Heritage Committee, item 13.1 is 159 Montreal Road Resolution of Appeal. Is that carried? 13.2 is the demolition of St. Patrick's Street properties. Is that carried? Item 14.1 was a motion from Councillor Brown. There is a replacement motion that makes a small change, I understand, here. So if everyone's okay to deal with that quickly. Councillor Kelly, I believe you have the motion.
Yes. Is that for 14.1 Taunton Place?
Correct.
Okay. All right. I will read that in now. Whereas in 2021, the city was approached by the owners of privately serviced properties on Taunton Place to pursue a process for local improvement to construct and connect the city's sanitary sewer system. In total, 4 properties were eligible for the local improvement petition process. And whereas in October 2023, council approved the local improvement project and associated cost recovery apportionment and enacted the authority. I'm just going to skip that bylaw. 2023460, and whereas the authority of the Local Improvement Committee revision is set out in Ontario Regulation 586/06 of the Municipal Act 2001, my God, the Committee of Revision must review any objections submitted by affected homeowners and determine whether any adjustments are required in accordance with the regulation. Once the Committee of Revision approves the local improvement assessment role, council can pass the bylaw to impose the charges on the affected properties. And whereas a determination on the length of a special charge recovery period is within council's authority, and whereas finance and corporate services have no concerns with the support support a longer special charge recovery period of 20 years. And whereas the Committee of Revision met on February 20th, 2026 and adjourned until March 10, 2026 to allow for council consideration of a longer special charge recovery period from 10 years to 20 years, as raised by the affected property owners. Therefore, be it resolved, the council approve a 20-year special charge recovery period for the Taunton Place sanitary sewer extension. My apologies for having such a difficult time this morning reading that motion.
No problem, Councillor Kelly. Thank you. Is that carried? From Emergency Preparedness and Protective Services Committee, item 15.1 is the motion from Councillor Dudas on Ottawa's Animal Care and Control Bylaw. Is that carried? 15.2 is the motion from Councillor Bradley on the driving school prohibition zone near the Walkley Drive Test Centre. Is that carried? From Environment and Climate Change Committee, 16.1 is the Community Environmental Projects Grant Program Expansion. Is that carried? 16.2 is the motion from Councillor King regarding Bird Friendly Ottawa's application to Nature Canada. Is that carried? We will hold item 17.1, the official plan update. From Planning and Housing, item 18.1 is the official plan and zoning bylaw amendments for 550 Wanaki Road. Is that carried? 18.2 is the heritage permit for alterations at 110, 116 York Street. Is that carried? 18.3 is a zoning bylaw amendment for 1670 10th Line Road. Is that carried? 18.4 is a motion from Councillor Gower, minor corrections, new zoning bylaw. Is that carried? From Transit Committee, we have item 19.1, the motion from Councillor Hill on a transit audit. There is an amending motion for this just to change the timeline that's referenced in point 1.1. Is everybody okay to deal with that quickly? Okay. Councillor Hill, did you want to provide the amending motion?
Certainly, Mr. Mayor. Transit audit, that council directs OC Transpo's Chief Safety Officer to conduct an audit in accordance with the relevant provisions of the Municipal Act into the safety concerns that resulted in Line 1 trains being removed from operation due to the cartridge bearing assembling spalling issue. And A, that the audit be initiated as soon as full service has been restored and that it be presented to the Transit Committee no later than 4 months following its commencement, in camera if deemed necessary. And if full service is not achieved, or if it is identified that full service will not likely be achieved by the end of Q3 2026, that staff provide a report to the Auditor General and Council that identifies the projected full service completion timeline, all known issues, spalling and otherwise, regarding the Line 1 technical complications, explaining the most current information and analysis as to the issue, and C, a draft of the audit be provided to the Auditor General of Ottawa prior to the audit being submitted to committee, and 2, request that the Auditor General consider increasing the priority of the Agile audit of the LRT on her 2026 to 2077 work plan so that work can begin as soon as the audit by OC Transpo has been submitted to the Auditor General's office, should she believe further value could be added by her office in this area.
Okay, thank you. Just to be clear, the underlined portion is what has changed. That's the amending motion. So we'll vote on the amending motion, then we'll vote on the motion as amended. Councillor Brockington?
Thank you, Mayor. Just a quick question. Part A references in camera if needed. What would trigger a requirement to go in camera for this subject matter?
Mr. Mayor, if there were any sort of aspects from a litigation or any aspects from a litigation standpoint that we'd want to go in camera for that.
So I just want to ensure there will still be a public report and any matters that need to be held and dealt with in camera would be dealt with in that fashion. Is that correct?
Mr. Mayor, that's correct.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Brockington. So the amending motion, is that carried? And then the item is amended, is that carried?
Carried.
And the bulk consent agenda, is that carried?
Carried.
All right, let's go back to item 17.1, which is the official plan update with growth projections. And we have a couple of motions, I believe. First, Councillor Gower, I believe you have a motion.
Yep, thank you. Thanks to Councillor Kitts for seconding this. Whereas Ottawa's official plan seeks to achieve more growth through intensification than by greenfield development, and whereas maintaining the existing urban boundary and village boundaries can help the municipality conserve resources, promote sustainable growth, and manage the efficient use of land. Therefore, be it resolved that during the consideration of the official plan amendment in 2027, staff include an analysis of no settlement area expansion that outlines impacts and trade-offs on considerations such as servicing, transportation, financial, environmental, and compliance with provincial policy. Thanks.
Did you want to speak to it at all, or you?
Just to add that definition, no settlement area expansion would include urban boundary expansion as well as village boundary expansion. And I think Councillor Kitts and I felt this was important to raise, given the discussion last week and the concern about the impacts of expanding either of those boundaries. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Gower. Councillor Devine?
Thank you, Chair. I'll just read it in. Thank you. Whereas the City of Ottawa's projected growth out to 2051 is expected to be accommodated through a mix of housing types, with a growing share attributed to apartments, row housing, duplexes, and additional dwelling units. And whereas the City has taken steps to encourage even greater intensification since the 60% target for intensification was approved in 2021, and whereas there is a direct correlation between intensification and land needs, which impact the total amount of land required to accommodate the expected growth out to 2051. Therefore, be it resolved that planning staff be directed as part of Step 2 of the Growth Management Process Strategy Update to include reasonable variations to growth management criteria in relation to land needs for the accommodation of growth. And just to speak to it briefly, there was a really good conversation during a joint committee last week. Several councillors and delegates just raised questions trying to get an understanding of the assumptions. And all this motion does is try to just enable that council is provided with as many options and information as possible for Step 2 of that process. It does not revisit the Step 1 numbers. It just asks that we be presented with reasonable variations in growth management criteria so we can understand what might be the impacts of different approaches to intensification and land needs. Thank you to my seconder for it. Thank you very much to Marcia and Royce for indulging me in several conversations over the past week. And as I understand it, this motion is staff supported. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Devine. Just before we go to councillors for their comments and questions, I'll just ask staff to comment on both motions, if you don't mind.
Yes, staff can implement both motions, have no concerns.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Leeper.
Thank you very much, Mayor. I'm fully supportive of both motions. I cannot remember in 2018 or 2019 when we last looked at the growth management strategy. There was a B, and C, porridge too hot, porridge too cold, and porridge just right approach that was taken to that. Is it staff's intention to bring sort of the same range of options to us? Because that was very, very helpful.
So, Mr. Mayor, this is an update of the growth management strategy. With the timeframes that we have before us, we were not planning to do specific scenarios along those regards. However, we will provide a range of options. So, for example, what with the different intensification targets we will be looking at, what might be the different densities on our urban greenfield lands to accommodate the dwellings, and finally the ratios of residential to non-residential to form complete communities. We would just not be packaging all those together in specific scenarios, but council will be able to see the different ranges or the variations at each step through the growth management strategy.
Okay, so not quite, because that was a fairly comprehensive exercise that you undertook in the previous version of this. So it sounds like you'll get a little bit closer, but you're not going to quite have the same rigor, if I will. I'm sorry, that's not necessarily the right word, but yeah. Marcia, sorry.
Thank you. Through the mayor, I would just support Royce in that if these two motions pass, it would add more discussion about variations in the step 2. It would be variations of each of the criteria where it makes sense to have variation as you're prioritizing the criteria that would inform. And if the Gower-Kitts motion passes, it would be asking us to look at the trade-offs and relative implications of various scenarios, particularly a non-urban expansion scenario in the work that would come back in part 3. So I think that if these motions pass, there is more of that conversation around the choices in front of council and the implications of those choices.
When you're discussing the implications of those choices in a no expansion scenario, that could require zoning changes. If the intensification were deemed to be such that we would need to add significantly more intensification than we've already permitted in our new comprehensive zoning bylaw, is if you do see the potential that we would have to revisit the CZBL, that would be something that you would flag for us?
Yes, but not having done the work, I would hazard a guess that zoning isn't the biggest challenge. It's going to be infrastructure, both transportation and water, wastewater infrastructure, and the choices that are being made in terms of funding infrastructure as it relates to where we put growth.
If council were to make choices in favor of not expanding the urban boundary, for example, that then could potentially have implications for having to redo the TMP, IMP, et cetera.
Well, I would say those documents are always iterative and they're meant to work together. So we will be amending those documents regardless of where we land. We also would have to look at market circumstances and what is actually selling in the market and how that relates to, because the municipality alone can't control just by identifying where they want the growth. So those are all the kinds of things we consider in that official plan amendment when it comes back in 2027.
Okay, fascinating discussion. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Leeper. Councillor Menard.
Thank you very much, Mayor. Thanks for the report. I am really concerned about not the work that you've done and the report itself on the population projections. Perhaps the province is more accurate than the original staff projections, remains to be seen on population. My bigger concern is around housing typology. Because if we approve this today on the population projections that are there with the housing typology associated with it, the massive increase in single unit homes is going to necessitate a very large increase to our urban boundary in all likelihood. And that, of course, adds huge costs, puts much more pressure where services are not provided in suburban areas, and is bad for taxpayers. So, and the environment. So I just, the numbers the statements in the report from Hemson, I think, are positive around apartment dwellings, but they don't seem to be reflected in the actual figures that they've put forward for single, semi-row, duplex, and apartments. Apartments seem to be getting much shorter shrift than they have been even in recent history in the projections, whereas we are projecting a huge amount on the single units, which is only going to be mostly greenfield development and urban boundary expansion. So though I am fine to accept the population figures we have to accept from the province, the issue is more how those will shake out based on recent history. And in recent history, we've been seeing a lot more apartments, we've been seeing a lot more percentage growth in the urban area than the official plan projected. This seems to take us backwards. It seems to be reverting to the old goals of the previous official plan, where we're having much more greenfield, much more suburban expansion that is not healthy for our city. So I'm fine on the population projections to approve that on the report, but the typology piece is where I'd ask staff to go back and look at this on the numbers again. There's some graphs in there where we've taken a very pessimistic approach and instead of a more optimistic approach. And it's those sorts of things where, listen, based on our last 5-10 years, we should probably be taking a bit more optimistic approach than we have in those typologies that have come out. So I guess just to staff, if we approve this here today, is this going to be utilized, say, in the OLT appeal that's coming up for urban boundary expansion that'll happen? Is this going to be used then to say as a hammer for those developers looking to do those one-off expansions and say, well, look, your typologies all say this, so you have to expand, even though you've refused it at planning committee? To me, that's where we're heading with a lot of these projections.
So through the mayor, I would say the decision to accept or not accept the population projections and the household formations and employment projections outlined there will have an impact on any live appeal that we have, for sure. The industry is looking to see where we land. We are relying on the consulting advice we got from Hemson, a very reputable firm. If it is the will of council to relook at that work, it would require a motion to send us back, and it will change the timeline because we cannot make the end of April coming back with, should the divine Menard motion pass, it requires a little extra work for us, but we think we can still make that within the April timeline. If we are going to go back and revisit the numbers, and I understand why you're suggesting that, that would require a motion, and it will change our time frame in terms of when we would come back for this conversation. I don't know that it would change our phase 3 timeline, because that's already in early 27, but it absolutely would impact phase 2.
Yeah, and that's fair, and I completely understand the point you're making around the timelines we've got. And just to be clear, on the housing population side, I have no issues with what is in the report. It's the formation typology piece that is really going to affect us as a city in terms of how much more we may need to pay to expand outward, and the effect on everyone else's taxes. And so, Mayor, I do think it would be wise to make sure we're re-looking at some of those figures. I think Hempson has done really good work. They've talked a lot about the cost of urban boundary expansion. It's the where our city has indicated it's going in the official plan, and the last 5 to 10 years of where we've been that I don't know are as reflected in the Hempson results here as city staff may input on. So I do think it's worthwhile, Mayor, to make sure that what we're approving, and maybe you can intervene here, is not a final, that there is some room here for some small basic adjustments in the stage 1 before we're moving to the stage 2 piece.
So is that reflected in the answers you just got, or not?
Well, I very much appreciate the answers, and they're reflective of my concerns. I think it's the I'm worried that if council says yes to this today, the numbers are final, and then there's a hammer on us, and later on when we come to stage 2, that every urban boundary expansion that's coming our way, we got to approve it because the housing typology and formations in here are very bleak on the single versus the apartments versus other types. So that's my concern. I raise it as we could have a motion to say that this is draft and staff to further review the household formations. I'd be fine with that. I want to make sure that there's an understanding in the room of what the implications of what these formations are saying here today.
So could you comment just on is this the final frontier, or will there be other milestones at which council will have the opportunity to adjust if necessary?
So through the mayor, I believe Councillor Menard is saying that he agrees that we accept the population projections and maybe even the employment forecasts, but he is not accepting the household projections and is asking for that work to be redone. If it is not a motion here, then we will be accepting the household projections, and that will become the basis of the work going forward. So if that piece is of concern to council, it should be changed now. All I'm saying is that will also adjust our work plan. As long as everyone understands that, then it is I would recommend that you approve the part that you do have no concerns with, so that we can move in parallel, so that the other work can occur.
Sorry, say that again. Just repeat that last part.
So if council supports the forecast and say the employment targets, that would be important to make clear, so that it isn't revisiting the entire exercise, it's revisiting housing typology, which I believe is Councillor Menard's concern.
So
I can come back with a wording with staff after others speak, if you'd like, Mayor.
Okay. So you would be making a motion I can
do that. I'll work with staff on it.
Okay. Councillor Tierney?
Yeah, just looking for clarity, and I apologize. I guess we're getting a lot of this information now, and in this motion. My understanding, this is about getting more information that you probably would have been doing anyway, right? I'm looking at Marcia. This is about getting more information, is it not? There's a lot, we're looking at you because you're kind of the head, and we want to know where this is going to lead to on certain items, especially with old population projections versus what the province is telling us. I think that's a very valid concern. At the same time, I want to make sure that this doesn't hinder a lot of the applications being approved today, because I'm trying to rifle a lot of this stuff through as we go, because we need intensification. Even on Summerall Boulevard, I think we're just doing another 400 units, Councillor King. So what does this do? Does this not simply provide more information? Is that what this is doing? Otherwise, maybe we should send this back somewhere for more discussion, because I'm supporting this because I think it makes sense to get more information. Why would we not want more information? You tell us, you're in charge.
So I, through the mayor, that I think the motion that we're rapidly trying to draft now would be that the projections and the employment projections and the population increase be supported by council. That what you'd be saying there is that you accept that the province has told us we're going to grow by about 500,000 people, and you accept that, and that you accept the consultant's analysis of what that means for our employment needs in this community, but that you would be sending back the household projections for more analysis and discussion. Hemson was looking at, and I'm paraphrasing because they're the consultants and the experts. I am by no means an economist, but they were looking at it in the context of past trends, future projections, what the market can bear, what's going on. There's a lot of factors that go into that.
Sure.
Some of that was discussed at the joint meeting. So they would have to look at their assumptions, see if there's any possible scenarios or variations from those assumptions, or what would influence some of those assumptions. And it might be that we come back with exactly the same projections recommending approval, or it might be that we come back with different projections. But what you'd be doing is sending the household projection piece back. And the household projection is really, how does that population translate into the way people will live, and how many units and what kinds of units do people want? So you'd be sending that portion back for us to take a second look at it and have our consultants work on that. And then I don't want to predict whether or not that gets you a different answer or the same answer, but we would redo that part of the work.
So in my mind, and I've always been before you even got here, I've always said our numbers, I've never believed them. I think the province is right when it comes to what they're saying. It's a larger number. Clearly, they want us to go in that direction. So this would provide us more information based on that, would it not?
If you sent this part back, it would provide us more analysis. I would say that the consultants already did this analysis, but if they didn't do it to the satisfaction of council, or you're not comfortable with understanding why we landed there, then that's what you'd be asking us to relook at. And I do think that if we're looking at potentially various scenarios by the time we bring this back as an official plan amendment in 27, we are going to have to align household projections with, there is a relationship between what you think the market needs and the way the population will form households and the kind of land you're going to need to service that. So if we go back, we're going to have to look at that in the context of the other two motions should they pass.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you. And I think that's, so more information, numbers that the province feels that we should be using, and further transparency. I don't see the issue. I'll wait to see if there's modifications to this motion anyway, but as it stands, I don't see the issue with this right now. So I'll wait for the rest of the debate. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Curry.
Thank you. Mr. Mayor, for people who were at the joint ARAC Planning Committee meeting, we had a lengthy discussion on this, and one of the things we highlighted was right in the report from the consultant is he listed, well, the person who was speaking made the comment that he listed all of the things they could not take into consideration. They could not predict, right? Nobody has a crystal ball like that. That's the problem. But I mean, when we look at, and I hear we're only talking about household projections. I have concerns with the entire thing. I made those points at committee, right? We have potentially a defense bank coming here, 3,500 jobs. We have a compound semiconductor industry just out to spin out of NRC, could be thousands of jobs. We are listed as a defense industry. We will be seen as a cluster. So more and more companies will come to Ottawa. All of these things are so hard to predict. Like we have no idea how this is all going going to roll, right? So I find it just challenging to say we endorse this. And I don't know what Councillor Menard is working on. I hope it's something really good that I think I would support it. But something to say that we, like, nobody can know that these projections are right. I don't think staff were saying that at all either. They're saying we have to do something. But I think there's a risk in us saying we 100% agree with any of it. But I will say, right in the report, he indicates that he cannot predict this really at all, which is so funny. I think this is very messy. I can see how anybody would want to say our numbers are higher. I'm sure the development industry would love that. I think they've talked to many of us saying they think the number should be even higher. Well, of course, because then that would justify urban boundary extensions and more land being available. So we understand all the politics behind this. It's that us as a council endorsing that these numbers are correct and we're okay with them, I think there's a risk in that. So I don't know what, as I said, I think whatever Councillor Menard comes up with over there, I'll be supporting. But I think it's important for us to be very clear that we don't fully 100% endorse anything here right now.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Kitts.
Thank you very much. Yeah, so I raised this at committee, the fact that the building type in the Hempson report favors intensification between 2021 and 2031 and then dips for 2031 and 2051 and goes back to sort of what we have been doing for the last couple of years. And Hempson sort of kind of dismissed it to what Councillor Curry is saying, well, we can't, fully predict, and this is based on historical trends. But what I'm hearing, and I don't know if she's listening now, but is that there is a material consequence in having these numbers the way that they are because of the update that we are going to receive in 2027 and the way that we are going to, I guess, approach potential urban boundary expansion. I can repeat that. So,
I'm very sorry.
Yeah, no problem. I was just saying when I brought this up at committee, and Hempson sort of dismissed it, saying, well, this is historical patterns, and we can't fully predict. But what I'm hearing from the conversation today is that we shouldn't just dismiss this. It does have a material consequence in how we will approach urban boundary expansion. So to get this sort of the building type more in line with maybe how we're approaching things in Ottawa is actually critical. Is that what I'm hearing from you?
So this is a very important conversation, and I want to be really careful about how I answer this. The projections matter because they do inform the growth management strategy, along with the criteria that's going to come next. So how much do you value farmland? How much do you, what priority do you put on transit? What kind of other intensification targets are you expecting in different parts of the city? So there are a lot of other factors that go in. It's not just predictions about household formation, but it is one of the inputs that will be important. And what I'm suggesting is that Councillor Menard's motion seems to be moving towards taking a second look at the assumptions that went into the projections for household formation. And I'm just trying to be clear that we may come back with exactly the same information because it is based on economic analysis that Hempson did. But so if we went back to revisit those assumptions and have another conversation with committee and then council, that could be what you direct us to do, and we would do that alongside the next stage of work that we are doing in terms of the criteria. But it does require us to push out our timeline at least a month, if not two, in terms of being able to come back. So not everything, it's not a equation that household formation of singles means urban expansion, but it is one of the criteria that would inform the next stage of the conversation.
Okay, so then I do think it is important to have, because that jumped out on the page to me, the fact that it sort of reverts back to favoring single detached in later years based on the Hempson report. If we do the work, is that going to be stress tested in some way? Or do we sort of have the capacity to ensure that that reflects market conditions as well. Do you know what I'm saying? Like we got Hempson to do it for a reason.
I appreciate
right?
that. So market conditions and what that is all built into what the economists are providing us. So it isn't, that's why I'm not sure if even if we did more analysis, whether we get to a different outcome, because the market analysis is part of what they do, but that would be what we would revisit and come back with another conversation should this pass.
Okay, thank you.
So I just want to understand, though, what the sequence of events is and what the reaction from others is going to be if we change the timetable for this or revisit it. Can you walk through what impact that's going to have on your work? How's the provincial government going to react? How is the community going to react?
So I would just, through the mayor, to remind council, when we brought forward the work plan for the growth management strategy update in the fall, first in June, and then we had this conversation in the fall. The industry and by extension the ministry feels that we should have done this by now, and they are pushing all municipalities to get to this answer sooner rather than later, because without this answer, it locks us in. So we know we have population coming, but we're not doing anything yet to change how we're going to address that population. So absolutely, the industry and the current provincial government is pushing all municipalities to get this done as soon as possible. We argued in Ottawa that we wanted to see the guidelines that they brought out in the fall first, and then we have been doing this work over the last several months. So our timeline gets us to an official plan amendment in 2027, but that is already much too slow for many, both provincially and at in the industry, which is why we have been appealed, I think twice now, at least once, maybe twice, 3? Okay, there's quite a few appeals because the industry is frustrated about having to wait for this. So that's kind of happening in the background.
And so just what would be, just for clarity, and because this is all happening live and immediately, just walk us through what would happen if, and I haven't seen the motion yet, but if the motion passes, what would the delay be? What work would you have to do? What would the possible outcomes be?
So if a motion passes, which I haven't seen either, it would be that we would instruct our consultants, Hempson, to do additional analysis around household formation and any variation in assumptions that could be considered or reconsidered as it relates to what went into that household formation projection. And it's a number of types of households, so I'm assuming that there's a lot to unpack in all of those different pieces. And then we would bring back a report to planning committee. It was a joint planning ARAC, so we would likely do another joint meeting to discuss the next iteration of that work, whatever addendum to the report they provide, and then it would be discussed there. It would then come back to council, and we'd be looking for endorsement of the projections on household formation so that we could then move forward with part 2, which is the development of criteria. If council approves or endorses the actual population projection and maybe the employment work, then we could do some of this in parallel, but it would still push out our timeline. And so coming back to committee, I think end of April is definitely off the table, but May or June, we would come back to committee depending on how long it took Hempson to do that work.
But you're also saying that you might come back with the same numbers.
Yeah, until we do that work, I wouldn't. I don't guarantee that because you ask the consultant to look at it again. They've given us their best advice. So we're asking them to reconsider and look at it in light of the conversation we've been having. But yes, they may come back with the same information or they might come back with something different. I wouldn't know. We were comfortable relying on the advice they gave us, but if it's the will of council, then I just want to make everybody understand it might not get a different answer.
And would it be your preference to move ahead now, or would it be your preference to go back to them and ask for new projections?
Well, staff always like it when you agree with our recommendations, but I would say that if
But
there is
your preference would be to move ahead now.
If there is if there's a big disagreement about household formation, it will have impacts on the growth management strategy. So I'd rather we deal with it sooner than later, because we will not be able to undo the entire thing if you know, at the last minute. So if the comfort isn't there with our, you know, consultants that we trust, then we need to figure out how we move forward. So from that perspective, I understand why the conversation's happening right now.
Sure, it's an important conversation. But if we move ahead today with everything, as time moves on, if new information comes to light, what opportunities are there to pivot, to revise our plans? Because we're always, obviously, with big things like this, we're always making projections. Projections are guesses. They're not always accurate. They're often not accurate. As time moves along, can they be adjusted or revised? Like, how does that work? Because if we have new information that leads us to conclude, hey, we're not going to grow that fast, we don't need to do as much, are we stuck with the original projections?
So absolutely, if there was some noticeable change in market conditions, or, you know, legislative context, or something big that happens that in fact impacts the Ottawa market, we absolutely would revisit the projections. And I'm also trying to think. I mean, it's hard to write a motion while answering questions, but I'm also trying to think, what is our flexibility to consider this population formation issue alongside the work we are doing, so that by the time we come in 27, you know, if there has been changes to the assumptions, kind of work on the idea to do both things simultaneously, so that if there is changes in the assumptions because we find information to suggest that, we incorporate it at the end of the process, as opposed to taking a beat and figuring it out now.
Yeah, I guess that's what I'm wondering.
That's a possibility.
Is there another scenario where we can move forward with what we have today without pausing or stopping something, but at another date in the future, revisit the numbers to make sure that they're still accurate? Like, is there another scenario like that, which would potentially resolve Councillor Menard's concerns, but at the same time not mean we're holding up all the work that we want to move forward on now?
Yes, we would always be able to look at this later. We are relying on the numbers and the data we have now. So if we're going to, I think I just need a minute.
Okay. We can take a short recess and have some conversations about this and figure this out. Yeah. Let's take a short recess.
So Mayor, I've asked staff to circulate something. So hopefully that goes out during this time, and then we can take a look at it.
we're going to resume the meeting. And I just wanted to point out that the reason you heard a recorded anthem earlier is because our planned anthem singers were delayed because of a transportation issue. But they arrived at City Hall after we had already played the anthem. And since we just took a recess, I thought, why not bring them in and let them perform the national anthem that they came here to perform anyway. So I'm going to ask Councillor Desroches to introduce them, and if everyone would please rise if you're able.
Yeah, thank you very much, Mr. Mayor, and I appreciate the flexibility by members of council this morning. I don't think you can sing "O Canada" too many times in one day. It's my pleasure to introduce the children from École élémentaire publique Michel Dupuis, dans le quartier de Riverside Sud. Cette école a ouvert ses portes dans la partie de Riverside Sud en 2017.
This school opened in 2017 and was named in the honor of Michel Dupuis, one of the creators of the Franco-Ontarian flag that we can see here at City Hall and everywhere in the city and the province.
We proudly celebrated the 50th anniversary of the Franco-Ontarian flag.
It reminds us of the importance of bilingualism in our city, and I'm proud that the school in our community is bearing the name of a Franco-Ontarian.
Great to see these young children here. I'm glad we're able to accommodate them and invite them now to sing a second time at City Hall our national anthem. Thank you.
God keep our land glorious and free. Oh, Canada, we stand on guard for thee. Oh, Canada, we stand on guard for thee.
Bravo, merci aux étudiants. You know,
thank you all.
We got to hear the national anthem twice this morning. Maybe that makes up for the fact that we didn't get to hear it on Sunday morning after the hockey game. But as you say, Councillor Desroches, we can never hear it often enough, especially in these times. So, all right. I believe we have a solution now. And we're going to have a direction, or is it a motion? It's a motion, sorry. It's a motion instead of a direction. All right. So we have a new wording for Councillor Menard's motion, but I don't know that we ever saw the first one anyway. So Councillor Menard, do you want to just introduce this motion, please?
Yeah, thanks, Mayor, and thanks to staff for huddling on this. I think we're at a better place here, but therefore be resolved that staff be directed to review the implications on household projections as part of the proposed growth management strategy and the assumptions regarding intensification targets.
Thank you, Councillor Menard. Councillor Devine, were you looking to wrap up on your motion? Is that why your hand is up? Okay. Councillor Kelly?
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. And after I'm not in the room, so I apologize for that, but after the discussion in the room, I'm not sure how relevant my intervention will be, but I just wanted to say that I wholeheartedly support Councillor Menard's motion. I think seems to me that this is a very consequential file. I know urban boundary expansion, or the potential of it, is a huge issue in my ward. It comes up all the time and has multiple times this term of council as well. And I think these will be consequential decisions for our city for many years to come. So when I hear things like industry wants us to hurry up, I don't really care about that. I think they can wait a little longer, and we can make sure that we are comfortable with the decisions we're making around these projections and how they will play out over the following years. So thank you very much for the opportunity to comment, and I am happy to support Councillor Menard and thank him for bringing this forward.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Kelly. Just before people wrap up on their motions, does anybody else have a question or comment? Okay, Councillor Devine.
Thank you, Chair. I'll just spin off what my colleague Councillor Kelly just said there, and I can fully understand the concern that Council might have on any delays that any motions add to the process. For the sake of clarity, so we now have 2 motions on the table, and I just want to, for the sake of clarity from staff, the Devine motion, my motion, you don't see that as putting any delay on process as I understood.
Through the mayor, so all 3 motions now do not affect our timeline. And the way the Menard motion has been reframed is really to recognize that the population, household formation, and household types is based on the analysis of what we see today with the information we have today, and that when we look at intensification targets, we shouldn't drive our intensification criteria against merely that element. We should look at what we want to see from a criteria perspective, and then consider what additional incentives or system changes or investment needs to happen to impact the household formation. So it's not saying it's going to drive everything going forward. It's to say that we are going to continually look at that as we continue the rest of this growth management process. And if where we land on this growth management requires us to do something else that might impact those projections, then we will come back to council with that conversation. So I think it covers what people were looking for, but it does not slow us down in terms of our timeline.
Great, and just to just to go back to what my colleague Councillor Kelly said about that, our concern should not necessarily be rushing for the sake of what industry might be asking us to do. And I'm not saying that's the only reason we would be rushing. There's good reasons to move quickly towards addressing our crisis, but I'm not sure whether my colleagues noticed in the original report, under the legal implications section, there was very clear language in that section about what might be the consequences of every decision we make in this 3-step process. We will be making a decision today, adopting population numbers. There are consequences to that, and it even said in the report that the ultimate decision we make in step 3, where we make decisions on land or whatever, that will be seen as an iterative process from step 1. So every decision we make, including today's, is important. And just for that reason, I'm grateful that we had this conversation. Certainly a substantive issue, and I'm glad to see that a lot of my colleagues are engaged on this. Thank you very much. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. So we're wrapping up on from the people who had motions. Councillor Tierney. A new introduction of what?
Well, the amendment of the motion it was kind of quick, like this motion hitting the table, Mr. Mayor, and everything else has been kind of rapid. So sorry I didn't hit the button quick enough, but I'd like to speak.
Okay. Councillor Gower, do you want to wait then, or? Yeah, okay. Councillor Tierney.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So looking at this, I fully supported Councillor Devine's motion. There was some good discussions that went back and forth. So based on that, I think we've come to a position where Councillor Menard got some of what he wanted in there, not fully what he wanted, but this is the world of compromise. So at this point, it's Marcia, you've made it very clear this won't affect anything that's being built now. It won't slow anything down, and it's going to give us even more information and more transparency, correct?
That's correct. I think also it's important that council moves swiftly in this area, not because the industry is pushing us, but if we don't have a policy, then we will get these decisions made for us by the Ontario Land Tribunal. So I think getting a framework in place that council can support is in the best interests of the City of Ottawa.
I appreciate that. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Gower.
Yeah, just quickly on wrap up. If there's one thing that I hope comes out of here, it's reiterating what I think council's been very clear on in the last term and in this term, and that is that achieving more growth through intensification than by greenfield development. As a black and white statement, I'd like to say no more urban boundary expansion. There are some trade-offs to that might not be possible, but I think as a black and white statement, we need to intensify more than we have greenfield. That's a really easy and I think wide consensus that we need to achieve that. So I think this council does not want to see any more boundary expansion than necessary, ideally zero if we can achieve that. And that's what a lot of the discussion at committee and today has been. But I think we also have to emphasize, like, the province does not agree with us on that. The Ministry of Housing does not agree with us on that. At any time, they could take the current 15-year land supply requirement and increase that to 20 years or 25 years. And the work that we do here may be overridden. I think it was Hamilton in 5 years ago, they were updating their official plan about the same time we were. They went with I think they went with a no expansion or a very, very high intensification target, and the province completely overruled them. But I do think it's important that as our council, we be clear about where our table stakes are. We want to avoid urban expansion, village boundary expansion, wherever possible, because in general, it's not a healthy way to grow a city. So thank you for the discussion today, and thanks to staff for all your work on this. Oh, and one other thing. In hindsight, I wish when we started this process, we had asked staff to bring 2 consultant reports. So we had 2 separate opinions, like 2 different consultants, see where their projections on household types align and where they're different. And it might have given us a bit more to dig into and might have made the next stages of this a little less controversial or debatable as we go through. So maybe for the next time that we do a big update to our growth management, that's something that we could look at doing. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Gower. All right. So we'll vote on the motions first and then on the item as amended. On Councillor Gower's motion, is that carried?
Carried.
Councillor Devine's motion, is that carried?
Carried.
And Councillor Menard's motion, is that carried?
Carried.
Dissent.
Okay, thank you. And on the item as amended, is that carried?
Carried.
Okay, we will jump ahead to item 21 on the agenda. There are no in-camera items. Motion to adopt reports. Councillor Leeper.
That the Ottawa Public Library Board entitled Hunt Club Branch Lease Agreement Built Heritage Committee Report 29A, Committee of Revision Report 1, Emergency Preparedness and Protective Services Committee Report 21, Environment and Climate Change Committee Report 22, Joint Planning and Housing Committee and the Agriculture and Rural Affairs Committee Report 8, Planning and Housing Committee Report 60, Transit Committee Report 23, and the reports from the City Clerk entitled Status Update, Council Inquiries and Motions for the period ending February 20th, 2026, and Summary of Oral and Written Public Submissions for items subject to the Planning Act. Explanation requirements at the City Council meeting of February 11th, 2026 be received and adopted as amended.
Is that carried? Motions of which notice has previously been given. Councillor Troster's motion on International Women's Day. Is that carried?
Carried.
You're good. Councillor Kavanaugh's motion on COVID-19 remembrance motion. Did you want to speak to it, or we're good?
I read it last time. I think it's self-explanatory.
Is that carried?
Carried. Thank you.
Councillor King's motion on the Black Veterans Monument. Is that carried? The motion by Conseiller Plante on the proposed new regulation under the Restricting Public Consumption of Illegal Substances Act. Did you want to speak to it, or do you want to wait for others to speak to it? Okay. Who would like to speak to it? Nobody has their hand up. Councillor Curry.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So the challenge I have is that I think this is a little more complicated than it may seem. being on the Ottawa Police Services Board, one of the things we do is we approve special constables, and we discuss at length, given the new act, which is part of the complication around this. The new act is complex. We talk about what duties special constables can have or not have, and what training is required. There's a lot of discussion at Ottawa Police Services Board around the role of special constables. So this motion indicates that we endorse the regulatory amendments under the Restricting Public Consumption of Illegal Substances Act, and also do a number of other things. So my general thought is that I don't know we fully understand this. I don't know that the Ottawa Police Services Board is fully aware of what's going on here. And I just think we might need some more time before we just endorse something. I think there are a number of challenges with this. I agree there should not be public consumption of drugs. I mean, I think everybody understands that. That's not a good thing. Where this involves special constables, though, is where I think this gets a little bit more confusing. And also in terms of the governance. I almost feel I would like to see the Police Services Board be aware of this first. I can understand how police might think this is maybe a good idea, but the Police Services Board does have to look at these things more closely in terms of what this might be for funding and how that funding may be allocated and what other priorities we have for special constables, and how in this situation, what would special constables do with the drugs that the person is consuming, and do they have the training for that? I just think there's many more things to think about here, and I'd certainly be interested to hear from other councillors on this. I'm not sure if maybe we want to defer it or something to that effect, that we get a little bit more time, but just holus bolus endorsing this, I don't think I can support that.
Thank you, Councillor Curry. Councillor Leeper.
Thank you very much, and I can keep it brief because I think Councillor Curry said a lot of what I would like to say, but I don't think we've had the opportunity to hear enough from the public and stakeholders. We know that the legislation that has created the conditions under which the province is contemplating this regulation making is fraught with issues. I'm not sure that every citizen of Ottawa would be fully on board with undertaking anything under that legislation. There's a lot of questions that I don't have the answers to today around transit constable accountability, for example. I know what the accountability mechanisms are for police. They're independent. There are a number of them. I don't know that our transit constables are necessarily subject to the same independent accountabilities for piece of legislation, the violation of which can result in tens of thousands of dollars in fines and even 6 months of imprisonment for violating some of the aspects of this. There's a lot I don't know. We have not heard from public delegations. I would suggest that I certainly understand the impetus of the speed with which this is coming. Those comments are due March 1st, but I think Council would be wise not to adopt a position on it until we all feel a lot more confident that we know a lot more about what could be a fairly momentous step. That's not to say that we don't need to do something about the consumption of opioids at transit stations. I hear about it every week. We have all used the George Street entrance, for example, some of the other transit stations where the residents of Ottawa are expressing concern about the behaviors that they're seeing and some of the social disorder. But going without adequate information into endorsing the provincial approach would be, I think, irresponsible on the part of this council. So I think the province can do without our input as they consider the regulation, and various councillors may wish to provide their own independent contribution into that process. Thanks, Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Gower.
Thanks, Mayor. If I could ask staff, what's your analysis of these regulatory amendments, and what difference would it make to your current operations?
Mr. Mayor, with respect to our special constables, right now they currently do have the full power of police officers on or in relation to transit properties. This delegation comes from the Ottawa Police Services Board. So we have the ability to arrest, seize, and lay charges and confiscate illicit drugs, on or in relation to the property. But it does give our special constables an additional tool in how they manage these types of situations. So it's not a significant change in how we operate. But as I said, it does give us another tool in how we ensure the safety and security of our system for both our customers and our residents.
Let me ask a different way. What would the public using OC Transpo vehicles, stations, bus stops, what would they see on a practical level as a change of approach, or what would it make things safer, I guess, and how would or wouldn't it? Or I'm trying to really understand what difference these regulations make.
I think that the primary difference for our frontline staff, for our special constables, would be the ability to lay a provincial offense in addition to the current powers that they have already now.
I guess I'm struggling because as I'm learning more about this, there's a lot of confusion, and I'm listening to what Councillor Curry mentioned, that we really don't understand this. And it seems like there's some nuance around this, that asking council to endorse this right now might be premature. I would suggest perhaps the mover and the seconder, the mover and the mayor, understand what they're looking to accomplish through this. Perhaps they should be the ones writing directly to the Solicitor General rather than having a council endorsement, given some of the confusion and clarity around the nuance in these regulations. Thanks, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Gower. Councillor Tierney.
Yeah, so I think we've just heard it. The province is allowing us to do this, correct? Like we're allowed to. There's no restrictions either way. We're allowed to go ahead with the special constables. I'm thinking this because I got Blair Station. I was there this morning. Maybe Tunney's is rainbows and unicorns, but I'm telling you now, there's massive issues at Blair Station. So this seems to me more like a dog peeing in a fire hydrant. Who owns it? If we have the tools now, it kind of behooves us not to go ahead with something that is an identifiable problem, is it not? Is there anything that's, like, we've heard the comments about policing, and again, the 5 people that voted against the police budget, figure that out on your own. I thought it would mirror that vote, but it sounds like there might be a couple people concerned, so maybe you can add some context to this.
Mr. Mayor, what I could add is currently our officers have the ability to lay charges under a federal offense, and then this would make it a provincial offense. Yeah. So that's what I mean when I reference, additional tools for special constables. So it wouldn't be just a federal offense for use or consumption of illicit drugs on our system. It would also be a provincial offense as well, and then that opens up other opportunities from a back end or from a prosecution standpoint.
And didn't the province give us a lot more money for transit security and transit policing and special constables?
That is correct. Through the Solicitor General funding, there was a 3-year program in which additional funding has been provided.
Well, I think it speaks for itself. It's about make it transit safer for people. We can have a whole policy discussion on additional things, but why would we vote against making it safer for our transit riders? So I'll be supporting Councillor Plante on this one. I don't know what we're arguing about here. The police board could have moved on this a while ago, and I love police. I supported their budget. 5 people didn't. I did. I'm very confused why we feel that this isn't the police's ballywick. It's clear it's not. Anyway, I'll leave it there, Mr. Mayor, but I'll be supporting Councillor Plante.
Thank you, Councillor Tierney. Councillor Desroches.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. That was a good line of questioning from the chair of our transit services to Mr. Charter and his team. As Councillor Tierney points out, the special constables for OC Transpo play a key role. I'm very grateful. I think I speak on behalf of my constituents for the provincial funding that will see more special constables in the system. We're expanding our rail system very shortly, and I think certainly I heard during the budget process, and I hear on a regular basis, that public safety and the safety of our transit system is a priority. And if we're going to have these special constables, then they should be equipped with with the tools and the authorities they need to make our transit system safe. I appreciate that some colleagues have some concerns. This always happens when we get into endorsing provincial legislation, which we've done many times on this council. And if we are going to take the view that, well, we have to look at the specifics of it and see how it goes through the regulatory process and committees at Queen's Park, if that's the case, then let's just have no more of these. Okay, let's let the process continue at the province, and if that's going to be our position, let's do it. But that hasn't been the views of this council. We've had these types of requests come before, and we've supported them. I'm going to support it today, but again, if you take that view that, well, we should really just stay out of it, then this should really be the last one that we do in this term of council. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Desroches. Councillor Menard.
Thank you very much, Mayor. I'm always concerned when we're looking for even more enforcement. There already is enforcement on this, but even more enforcement on something when we already have a lot of the tools to deal with this. It's happening at a time in the province where, supervised consumption sites are being shuttered as well. This is not something we're going to criminalize our way out of. But if I'm writing a letter to the province, I can do that, as a councillor. But if I was writing this letter, I would be talking about things like how a fine for taking transit without paying the $4 fare is $260 versus, say, a parking ticket, which costs $50. And I'd write and say the fine for a parking ticket can be cut in half if you pay within the first 7 days. But the fine for not paying for that $4 transit fare, you don't have an early payment option for that. I mean, those are the types of things I would write to the province about. I think much more impactful. I also don't think this is a massive problem befuddling our transit system every day, every week. I think this is very minor. And so I would encourage the local councillor, if there is local concerns there, absolutely write about those local concerns. But as a councillor, I don't want to be writing the province about this. Personally, I don't feel this way. So, and I think we have a lot of the tools, as some other councillors are pointing out, in the first place. So, it's just my perspective on it, Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Devine.
Thank you, Chair. I'll admit I'm kind of waffling on this one, and I think the local councillors on the speakers list. I definitely want to hear from the local councillor, if only so that I can get a clear sense on the problem that's been identified. And I appreciate the concern of trying to do what we can to address any legitimate safety issue on transit. I also appreciate the concern of my colleagues about introducing new tools, perhaps in a broad way, without doing a little bit more homework first. Can I just get clarity from staff? And I'll admit not to being an expert at all on this, because this does not come up so much in my ward. Can OC Transpo, and I understand we're granting new, forgive me if I get this wrong, but new provincial powers to OC Transpo special constables, or we would be, but under current system, can OC Transpo special constables arrest or issue fines for illegal consumption?
Under the federal legislation, yes, they can.
So would that mean then that by passing this, your special constables would not be policing behavior that they don't already police?
Our special constables do police the behavior, but as I mentioned, it gives them another opportunity to address in a different way. And this is where, the difference between the federal and provincial legislation is. On the provincial side of things, it's the ability to levy, fines and provincial charges as opposed to a criminal record.
And I'm not sure if I understood. By passing this, giving them, your special constables, the ability to police that in a different way, are you saying that affects the fine that they can levy or whether or not they can physically arrest? It doesn't mean that it opens them up to, now we can police the consumption of gin, whereas before we could only police the consumption of scotch. It doesn't mean that. It's the tools that they can deploy?
So presently we can issue criminal charges. Under the provincial legislation, we could also be looking at fines in addition to that. That's the key difference. Right now, under the legislation that the special constables currently have, it would be a criminal charge that they could levy. The provincial legislation would then make it, fines for small amounts of illicit substances while in the system.
Does that then mean then, if currently a special constable can issue criminal charges, then that constable is likely going to want to make sure that the offense is at a certain threshold before they bring that big hammer? But if now with provincial they can issue fines, can I presume that they may then be able to lower the threshold, at which point they're going to intervene because it's only a fine and not a criminal charge?
Mr. Mayor, I think that's a fair statement.
Okay, well that opens up a kettle. Can I ask what might be the training that they currently have, at what level to intervene, and whether or not there'd be any kind of increase in training so that they would be able to exercise a certain level of discretion on when and where and whether to issue a fine?
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, I'll ask our Chief Safety Officer who oversees our special constable to talk a little bit about the training program. But I can say while Sabrina gets settled here is that they follow a very, very extensive training program. It's all, it's part of the delegation authority with Ottawa Police Services. So it's the use of force training, it's all the legislation, and then all our reporting requirements in addition to that. But I'll let Ms. Pazian provide a little bit more detail.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, yes, the special constables obviously receive training as it stands right now in order to provide the oversight that they do today. And this, we would increase the training in order to have the special constables be able to provide oversight and enforcement of this provincial act. But they already have training today on drug seizures under the Controlled Drugs and Substances Act at the federal level. So that this is already training that they have right now, and there's oversight both through the Ottawa Police Services with our MOU and also internally with professional standards.
Thank you. So just so I understand, if right now they have powers under federal law where they can impose a criminal charge, and I'm going to assume that a special constable is not going to necessarily issue that criminal charge for something as, I'll just say, as benign as, you're riding the bus and I can tell you're drunk. They might not go to that degree, but if at the provincial level, they would then have that authority, correct? You're drunk on a bus, I'm going to issue you a fine.
Yes, it'd have to meet the requirements under the legislation, and of course there's discretion and circumstances that they would take into account.
Okay, so again, I want to hear more of the debate. While I recognize there are legitimate safety issues that we might want to address, it does sound like this opens the door perhaps even far wider than we might want to go, which is often the case when we grant new enforcement powers. So I'm still on the fence, but I want to hear if there's any more debate. But thank you. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Carr?
Yeah, thanks very much. These questions are probably for Sabrina. Just a point of clarification. The OC Transpo Special Constables have had designated powers under the Controlled Drugs and Substance Act since 2018, I believe, via the memorandum with the OPS. Do you know of any other transit authorities within Ontario that have those powers already?
No, I don't know of any other transit authorities within Ontario that have that power already.
So this legislation will be of tremendous benefit to other transit authorities, probably more than to OC Transpo, I would say?
Yes, that's correct, Councillor.
Okay, so right now under the Controlled Drugs and Substance Act, if you seize a substance, does it get tested to make sure it's drugs before a charge is laid?
I'm going to need a minute to confirm that, but I believe the answer is yes. I'm just checking with our Chief Special Constable. And I just, for a point of clarification on the question about intoxication, that's a completely separate act. So our Special Constables already have provincial authorities for intoxication under the Liquor License and Control Act. This is about controlled substances, not open alcohol, just for clarity. And to answer your question, Councillor, I've just heard no, that they are not tested before the drugs are not tested before the charges are laid.
But before it goes to court, they would be tested
as part of the evidentiary process. Yes.
Okay.
I believe so.
So under the new, what's proposed under the RPCS ISA, the drugs would never have to be. They wouldn't have to be tested. A charge can just be laid, right? Like a charge can be laid in both cases.
Correct.
But they would be it would not have to ever be demonstrated that it's actually drugs that were being used under the provincial. Is that correct?
Correct. In this scenario, like the special constable would seize the drugs, the person would be charged, the drugs are then obviously transported safely and securely, and then the Ottawa police would collect it and then send it for analysis, and then it would still need to be tested after that.
Okay, perfect. I think that there's no doubt that drug use on transit is a problem across Ontario. I think many people would say that. I think the difference with Ottawa is that we already have most of these tools in place, and that we are not sure what it would look like and what the implications are of the new provincial offences and what it would look like. I have no doubt that this legislation will probably be passed by the provincial government as well, but I do believe that there is an unknown in terms of how that would be managed, and if we're giving fines to people with drugs, and if they won't leave, you also can get a fine if they don't leave, if they're using drugs and they won't leave the premise, correct?
That's correct, under the Trespass to Property Act.
Okay, and so have you looked at how many charges could potentially be laid with this that currently aren't being laid? Like your special constables already have a lot of these powers. So how much more of a workload do you think it would be? How many more cases do you think it would cover?
I don't have that data here through you, Mr. Mayor, but we're happy to bring some analysis around that to provide a further answer. But as Mr. Charter said, this is really just a different way to leverage a tool in our toolbox. You know, as many of you know, if you're charged criminally, that's on your criminal record, whereas this would be a fine that wouldn't remain on your criminal record.
Okay, that's all for me. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Carr. Councillor Lowe.
Thanks, Mayor. The last speaker actually covered most of my questions, but I will make a very brief comment that it is not a minor problem. When in the control room, we call that entrance, we call the George Street entrance the hotel for a reason, and that these, you know, if this doesn't generate any too much extra workload for SCU, then you know, it's something that's worth exploring. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Bradley.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. just some additional clarity. So the only change here is that now we can issue a monetary fine as opposed to the only tool being a criminal offense.
That's correct.
Yeah. Okay, so is this the right tool to solve the problem? I mean, I understand that there is open drug use on public transit in our stations, and that's something that we definitely don't support, but is there any evidence to suggest that a monetary fine for people who are struggling with addictions issues is going to solve the problem?
Respectfully, through you, Mr. Mayor, I think that question could be for the province who are enacting the legislation. This is something I assume that was done through the stakeholder reviews and analysis as they look to pass this. It's not something that the special constables of Ottawa have like assessed specifically with OC Transpo as like an appropriate mechanism to solve something that's not a problem that's exclusive to our transit system, not to our province, but nationally. Yeah, and this is a problem, pardon me, sorry, that we are seeing, just to echo Councillor Lowe's comments, like every single day in our stations.
No, and I appreciate that. It's just that when we are expanding powers to special constables, I want to make sure that the powers that we're granting are actually going to be effective at solving the issue that we're dealing with. And I'm just really struggling to understand when we're dealing with individuals who are likely dealing with mental health, substance abuse, addictions issues, that handing them a fine that of whatever it is, $200, is going to be of any consequence to this individual or is going to deter the behavior that we're looking to prevent. So I'm cautious in wanting to expand those powers because I'm not actually sure this is the right tool that the system needs to solve the problem. So I'm looking forward to hearing what the mover of the motion and perhaps the seconder of the motion have to say on this issue. But I'm not seeing a correlation between this penalty and actually deterring the behavior.
Maybe I'll just add one final thing just to Councillor Carr's earlier comment that the legislation is really also aimed like at provincially, whereas our special constables have this federal ability to charge criminally, whereas, for example, the special constables with the TTC do not.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Troster.
Thank you so much. Could staff clarify for me what happens if someone doesn't pay the fine? Who's given that fine?
Provincially, a provincial fine?
Correct. If special constables are given this new power and someone is issued a fine and they cannot afford to pay it, what eventually happens?
I'd maybe look to my colleague, Mr. Huxley, to answer that.
Mr. Mayor, under the under the existing statutory regime, it's a provincial offence, and so it would be similar to any provincial offence existing today, or even a bylaw offence. An individual who receives a ticket would have the option to contest that ticket, make representations before a justice of the peace, or contest it at trial. At all stages, the individual has an opportunity to make submissions as to their financial and other circumstances that would consider whether or not the fine, and I don't know what the set fine is, could be reduced or other measures implemented.
Okay, so what if this person has a serious mental health issue, is unhoused, loses the notice, doesn't show up at court, is unable to pay? What eventually happens? What if they can't be reached, they don't have a phone, and these charges pile up, or, you know, and they cannot pay them? What is the final thing that happens?
Mr. Mayor, the same process would apply in the provincial offences court, similar to, I mean, the benefit of this tool, and I suspect this is why the province implemented, is it's trying to take certain things out of the criminal courts and put it into the provincial offences court. So the consequences of not showing up for criminal court can be bench warrants and arrests and things like that. The consequences not remain a provincial offence fine can be, you know, plate denial on if someone is seeking to renew their license, or collections, etc. Those are the usual tools that are available when there's outstanding fines that have not been paid.
There have been other examples of what I would call very problematic Ontario law. I can think of the old squeegee laws that were repeated tickets for people. And if people can't pay, if they are so disenfranchised from the system, you cannot reach them. First of all, how is that a deterrent? I mean, if they know they can't pay, why would they bother? If a potential consequence is losing your license and you don't have a car, we're talking about a really unwell part of the population. Anyone who feels they need to use drugs in a transit station, I'm not saying it's good. I mean, public drug use is the #1 challenge in my neighborhood, but this provincial government closed the supervised consumption site in my ward, has allowed the proliferation of private addiction clinics that hand out narcotics with impunity, and is now saying they want to crack down criminally even more, or with fines on people who have no other options. I'm very concerned about the scope creep associated with this motion, and I'm also really concerned about the fact that we're discussing this without delegations. This should go somewhere, either to Transit Committee or to Police Board, as far as I'm concerned. It is very rare that we discuss something that is this significant in terms of the scope without a due committee process. This feels very rushed, and I think, like the mover is saying it's due by March 1st. I don't care, to be honest. Like this is a major decision. Is this something we endorse as a council or not?
I'm unsure what that comment was. I think you asked a question, now you've impugned the mover of the motion. Do you wish to recall that? Because it seemed like she provided you the information you want.
No, I say I frankly don't care if there's a provincial deadline. There's
Okay,
no
fair
legal
enough. I'll leave it to the
requirement.
chair.
There's no insult there. I'm simply saying that is not of concern to me. What's of concern to me is rushing a major decision about enforcement powers for special constables. This is a serious issue that I think we should take seriously, and it demands not just debate, but careful consideration and the opportunity to delegate. So that's why I'm very uncomfortable. And I don't think it's impugning the mover or anyone else to say the province is putting pressure on us to endorse a piece of legislation which has been absolutely slammed by public health authorities. It was not something that people who deal with people with addiction supported. The Ontario government pushed it through with very little debate as part of an omnibus bill. And now we have pressure on a council to essentially say we approve of the legislation and we approve of new powers for special constables. And I think that's incredibly problematic, and I don't think we should be endorsing it. And if we do endorse it, I think it needs to go through an appropriate committee or police board process where the public can have a say in this. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Hill.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So just from what I've heard today, I want to confirm that transit staff do in fact support this motion.
Yes, we do. Through you, Mr. Mayor.
I'm not sure if we had staff recently at the downtown summit, but it would be, I think, of value to hear if staff who attended the downtown summit this week heard to issues of downtown safety, safety in transitway, safety-related concerns as something that needed to be addressed in order to address the health of our downtown.
Mr. Mayor, from a transit perspective, I can state that we do regularly hear from customers and from staff of concerns of not just the look and the feel of the station, but that feeling of safety and security when accessing parts of the transit system. And I think I'm not saying anything surprising here, in that we have heard those concerns at Rideau Station. It's one of our highest calls for service. It's where we dedicate a lot of our time with our special constables, and it is something that we're acutely aware of, and we dedicate staff to try to address that as much as possible. But it is something that we do hear from our customers frequently.
Do we know if the police chief is aware and has made comment supporting or not supporting of this motion?
Not that I'm aware of, but I'm just going to quickly, I'll circle back to that question. I'm just waiting for a colleague to see. Not that I'm aware of, though, but it is open for provincial stakeholder consultation. And I know that the province had been intending to reach out not just to transit agencies, but also to police services. So I imagine the answer is yes, but I don't want to speak for the police chief himself.
Okay, thank you. And I think I heard all three city council members of the police board speak. I think it was split. I heard one speaking in favor, one speaking opposed, and one making some good technical comments. That's my interpretation. So I think what I've heard is that this is a motion that is looking to address concerns regarding public safety downtown in the transit spaces. It's looking to improve the response time to issues. It's looking to reduce police involvement, and in some ways to be a measured decentralization of enforcement. I appreciate the safety prioritization that this goes with, and I also think that this is addressing the issue of looking to provide transit riders with a perception of a safe transit system, which would ideally lead to improving ridership. I also don't see this as reducing harm reduction. I don't see this as reducing or replacing public health related approaches to support this. So I believe legislatively there's nothing inappropriate about us supporting this motion. I'll ask that question. Is there anything inappropriate for us to approve this motion today from a legislative perspective?
Mr. Mayor, it's my view that under the Municipal Act, the jurisdiction of a council that has interests on health, safety, and well-being of persons and protection of persons and property, this is within your purview, should council so decide, to make submissions on the proposed provincial legislation.
Okay, thank you very much. That's all my questions, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Hill. Councillor Plante.
Hi, thank you everyone for your comments. I didn't have anyone reach out to me over the last 2 weeks since this was read into the record, so I'm happy to answer any questions or that your questions got answered today. But I just want to be clear about what this motion does. This is a provincial regulation. As Councillor Desroches mentioned, we make comments and write letters about provincial or pending legislation all the time. The province is consulting right now on a proposed amendment through the Ministry of the Solicitor General. Municipalities have been invited to provide feedback, and the deadline to submit comments is March 1st. This came out, this was published in early January. Nobody brought this forward to Transit Committee, nobody brought this forward to Police Services Board, so I did it in consultation with the Mayor's Office, with the Chief of Police, and with Ryan Perrault, all of whom support this motion. I have spoken to them. I've also spoken to some special constables about this, and I'll get to that in a bit. We are not directing police operations. We are not changing police deployment. We are not touching the police budget. We are simply taking a position as a municipality in a provincial consultation before the deadline closes. If you read, Councillor Devine, I just wanted to touch on your comments about training. This also adds to the training about provincial constables on the issues of harm reduction, and it diverts police resources, as was mentioned earlier. I just want to push back on this. We're getting pressure from the province. There's no pressure whatsoever to provide comments. It was just an open comment section at the Solicitor General website. We generally don't hold public forums on provincial legislation. That is something the province does. I just want to clarify too that this doesn't immediately grant these powers to special constables. This is something the province is discussing with residents, and we are providing our comments into that portal. The motion asks whether the city supports expanding enforcement authority for OC Transpo special constables. It asks how transit safety connects to our municipal objectives, and it asks whether we are serious about ridership recovery and the financial sustainability of OC Transpo. This is Council's lane. Council responds to provincial consultations. We endorse or oppose legislation. We submit comments to regulatory registries. We write to ministries. We circulate motions from other municipalities. There is no procedural rule requiring council to defer to a board before expressing an intergovernmental position. Both bodies can submit independently if they wish. There is no exclusivity requirement. If the suggestion is to refer this to Police Services Board, I think that would create an unnecessary delay given that the March 1st deadline is in less than 5 days. If colleagues would like to invite comment to OPS or the board, I am open to that, but we do not need to cede jurisdiction to them on this issue. As I mentioned earlier, we have spoken and we have the endorsement of our police chiefs, several deputy chiefs, the General Manager of Emergency Protective Services. Thank you, Mr. Charter. I appreciate your endorsement as well. We met with them directly, and the Mayor's office consulted with them as well. Right now, if a special constable is called to a situation where drugs are being consumed, and this is what special constables told me, they cannot enforce currently under the Act. They have to wait for police to arrive. This means a train is held at the station and a bus is sitting in place while they are waiting for police to arrive. Riders are delayed while they navigate a technical gap in their authority. This is not efficient, and it does not restore rider confidence. This amendment will allow transit constables to address issues occurring within transit spaces in a timely and proportionate way without automatically requiring a police response for situations that are primarily happening in the transit system. My understanding is part of our broader objectives is to ensure that police resources are not being used for matters that are better addressed through appropriate health and community-based responses. We would be diverting police. This is something we want to do. This also aligns us with Quebec, Manitoba, and British Columbia, where transit special constables already have these authorities. Keeping this at council keeps the focus where it belongs. It is about transit safety, rider confidence, and downtown recovery. It is about our climate goals, financial sustainability of our transit system, and equity for people who rely on transit and cannot opt out of unsafe environments. This is municipal government, and it's entirely appropriate for council to take a position, and I would like a recorded vote on this, Mr. Mayor. Thank you.
Point of order. Could I just get clarity from staff? If somebody is consuming drugs on a train or a bus, does that mean...
That's not a point of order.
Well,
that's not...
Can I get a fact check?
No, I'm sorry, but that isn't a point of order. So we will go to a recorded vote on the motion, please.
Councillor Tierney.
Yes.
Councillor King.
No.
Councillor Brown.
Yes.
Councillor Gower.
Yes.
Councillor Skalski.
Yes.
Councillor Luloff.
Yes.
Conseillère Plante.
Oui.
Councillor Menard.
No.
Councillor Hill.
Yes.
Councillor Desroches.
Wait.
Councillor Carr. Councillor Dudas.
Yes.
Councillor Lowe.
Yes.
Councillor Bradley.
Yes.
Councillor Kelly.
Yes.
Councillor Troster.
Nope.
Councillor Brockington.
Yes.
Councillor Hubley.
Yes.
Councillor Johnson. Councillor Leeper.
No.
Councillor Devine.
Yes.
Councillor Curry.
No.
Councillor Kavanaugh.
No.
Councillor Kitts.
Yes.
Mayor Sutcliffe.
Yes.
17 yeas, 7 nays.
Okay, thank you. Motions requiring suspension of the rules of procedure. Councillor Tierney has a motion related to the e-bike pilot program that is of a time-sensitive nature. So on suspension of the rules, is that carried? Councillor Tierney?
Less controversial. It's about the e-bikes. If you don't know, for parcel delivery, they're great at eliminating GHGs. I'll just speak to it and go to the therefore be a resolve clause. I don't think anyone's going to oppose this. Pure Later and all others use them on the street. There is a timeline on this one. So therefore, it be it resolved that Council approve the city's continued participation in the provincial cargo assisted bicycle pilot program for an additional 5 years until March 1st, 2031, and extended by the province and staff report back at the conclusion of the final year of the pilot. Be it further resolved that Council delegate the authority of to the General Manager of Public Works and the Director of Traffic Services and their designate to approve the continuation of the city's participation in the provincial pilot program should the pilot be extended any further in the future, and the general manager and the director be satisfied with the operation of the pilot in Ottawa. Be it further resolved that Council delegate the authority to the general manager of Public Works and director of Traffic Services for their designate in consultation with legal services to amend the e-cargo bike bylaw number 2021-290 as required to implement the changes arising from the updates in the updates or the extension of the pilot project. And again, this is just time sensitive. Otherwise, I'd throw it back. It's been a very successful pilot. I think it was you and I, Jeff, that were kicking this off back in the day, and we had a great time. And we see what it does on getting big vehicles out of downtown, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Tierney. Councillor Lowe?
Thanks very much, Mayor. Question to Curie. I don't know if this would go to staff or the mover. Is there any indication of when this pilot might become formalized? Because I think we've extended this twice now, maybe 3 times, but is anyone aware of any indication of this potentially becoming formalized?
Yeah, I think Alain will speak to it, but in a nutshell, it's kind of like e-scooters. We don't know when pilots will end, but I'm assuming you're probably going to say the same thing, and I'll let the general manager speak to it.
Correct, Mr. Mayor. Basically, this is, I believe, the first extension, and it's really the province that's driving this process. So the reason why it's before you today is because basically March 1st is the deadline for it. So we want to make sure that those that are using it remain in compliance.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Leeper.
Thanks. I think in the same vein as Councillor Lowe, I don't understand why this hasn't just turned into a formal regime yet at the province, but are they asking you anything about how it's going? Like, is there any indication that there's anything they're examining, or have they sought information from you?
Mr. Mayor, we were not consulted when this came out, so it was a bit of a surprise to us.
Yeah.
But that's the extent of our involvement at this stage.
Okay. I would be very interested if it looks like there are any issues that they're still exploring and justify a continued pilot rather than just formalizing the regime. I'd be really interested if they do any outreach to you. Thank you, Chair. Mayor.
Okay, thank you. Is the motion carried? Councillor Curry has a motion requiring a suspension of the rules, also of a time-sensitive nature related to the Canada Lakes Golf and Country Club. On suspension of the rules, is that carried? Councillor Curry?
Thank you. Whereas the lands commonly known as Canada Lakes Golf and Country Club have historically functioned as a significant green space within the Canada Lakes community, and whereas in or about 1981 agreements associated with planning approvals for the development of Canada Lakes, the 40% agreement contemplated that the approximately 40% of lands within the broader Canada Lakes development area would be retained as open space, including golf course lands. And whereas the planning framework applicable to Canada Lakes relied in part on the retention of significant open space lands, and whereas recent Ontario Land Tribunal decisions respecting the subject lands have confirmed that Council must not fetter its discretion, and that planning approvals, refusals, and conditions must be supported by planning evidence, statutory authority, and the public interest. And whereas the City has repeatedly and consistently reiterated and affirmed its intent to use the tools at its disposal to prevent these lands from being developed in a manner that contravenes the 40% agreement, and whereas recent activities undertaken on site by the developer have led the community to raise concerns about the permissibility, safety, and appropriateness of the activities, and whereas the City has a responsibility to ensure that these concerns are fully addressed, that every reasonable precaution is being exercised, and that residents are receiving timely and accurate information about the activities on site. And whereas residents living adjacent to the site have reported vibration impacts, including shaking of homes, emotional distress, and concern about the disturbance of contaminated soils and alteration of established drainage patterns, and without sufficient time for residents to respond to the pre-construction condition survey that the proponent provided. Therefore, be it resolved that staff be directed to create a dedicated project page, Engage Ottawa, to improve public transparency respecting the 7,000 Campo Drive file, including but not limited to background files and history, ongoing record of FAQs, and any future studies submitted to the city and any peer reviews completed by the city. Be it further resolved that staff create an email list to send regular updates directly to the community regarding the file, and be it further resolved that staff ensure that there is an independent technical or legal third-party review of every substantive report or work plan submitted by the developer to the city, in addition to staff review, with those results to be publicly available on the project page. And be it further resolved that staff be directed to provide these regular updates and third-party reviews to the Planning and Housing Committee as IPDs for review and discussion at committee. And be it further resolved that staff engage with the developer on a best efforts basis to maintain site access for inspections and third-party reviews. And be it further resolved that staff retain independent drainage experts to proactively analyze the broader context of drainage on this site prior to receiving any reports with proposed solutions from the proponent. And be it further resolved that staff report back to council and the community on whether any construction activities should be paused, modified, or subject to additional controls pending the outcome of independent technical and legal reviews where such activities may pose risks to public safety, environmental protection, or municipal infrastructure. So, Mr. Chair, or Mr. Mayor, the situation on the course right now took a lot of residents by complete surprise. The description of works or earthworks was minimized. The description of the types of machinery was described to be very small. So as you can imagine, the community is very confused, and there is no communication from the city coming out that is reaching every resident. So residents have many questions. We're getting hundreds of emails, people phoning the Canada North office, phoning just about anybody, emailing everybody under the sun for help and guidance. And so I think what I'm proposing here would get some real clarity for the community. The project page would be critical, an email list would be critical coming from the city. This is a mercury contaminated site, and it is known, documented mercury contamination. There are a lot of regulations around that, and the community is not sure of what regulations apply. This is human health. The houses, as you know, are right beside this work. So people are wondering, is the mercury disturbed? What about if it's aerosolized, which is documented scientific research? We've had the medical officer of health ask the Ministry of Environment and Conservation and Parks to look at what's going on. A number of different groups are advocating that, you know, the construction completely stop. That's not what I'm advocating for here. I'm advocating for better community information and city oversight, so that we have third-party reviews as well, that the community can be assured that it is not developer-paid consultants that are providing all of the information. So this, in terms of our role, and I think the city solicitor made the comment about what our council's role is for public health and safety. This is in our power to do and is responsible, in my opinion. So I would look forward to support. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Curry. Councillor Leeper.
Thank you very much. I think I'll be asking Mayor whether we can consider the resolutions to be severable, because I'm contemplating dissenting on the portion that deals with independent technical or legal third-party review of every substantive report. I'm trying to understand, we just went through a process of removing city oversight of reports in favor of a standard of completeness. And I think we did that by way of an OPA. I'm wondering if there is a conflict here between that effort on the part of the city to remove red tape and what is being proposed here.
So through the mayor, that was a bylaw change to our development approvals, plans and studies bylaw, where we removed 13 studies, but that's when someone applies. Because Canada Lakes was not approved by the city, but approved by the Ontario Land Tribunal, what we're talking about here is the studies and reports that they would be required to clear the more than 100 conditions they have as a result of that approval that was granted by the tribunal. And it's pretty typical in a subdivision process of this magnitude that there would be a lot of additional work that they'd have to do that the city would need to review and be comfortable with in order to move from what they have now, which is draft plan of subdivision, to an actual subdivision agreement that would give them a notice of commencement and allow them to get a building permit. So we expect a year or more of back and forth with them in terms of their studies and additional work to clear these conditions in order to get to a place that would allow for a building permit.
So
at least a year, if not two.
Okay, in any other draft plan of subdivision and then a final plan of subdivision with the approval, if I've heard you correctly, you're suggesting that staff oversight of the submitted reports would be the same. There would be that staff oversight.
So typically we would review it as staff, and where we do not have the internal expertise, we would seek a peer review. In this motion, it is asking for us to do that internal review, but also buttress that with peer review.
Okay. Would that peer review be paid for by the developer making the application?
No, that would be taken by the city.
Okay. Okay, I will listen to the remainder, but thank you for the thank you for the answers. Thanks, Mayor.
So just to be clear, Councillor Leeper, are you asking for yet or for a separate vote on?
Yeah, I may dissent on one clause when we go through the.
It would be the third one?
1, 2, 3. Yeah, it is likely the third clause on which I would dissent if I dissent.
Okay.
Thank you.
Councillor Plante.
Hi, yes, just a quick question, because I've had some very significant develops. I'm thinking of the 200 Rideau Towers, the current one on North River Road, the Andaz that's going to be starting soon. Have we as a city created a website for private developers in the past?
So typically we have an engage page as it relates to a planning application that is coming in when the application comes forward and the public consultation and that piece happens. I would ask the director to just help me on the backstory on this particular case, since I wasn't here when it started, but we're in a slightly different situation because we didn't approve it. It came from the city didn't approve it. It came from the tribunal.
Mayor, with every application that comes in, there's a page put up on the development app, DevApps section of the city's website that lists all of the plans and studies. This application, certainly a very controversial one, is in a bit of a limbo period right now where it's through draft approval. The city's not currently reviewing applications or stud plans and studies associated with it, but there is some activity on the site. So it's, to answer your question, I guess that was put bluntly, is no, I cannot think of pages like this that would have been created for other development applications.
Okay, so this would be the first time that we create a page about a post sort of starting construction private developer. Okay, and I am just going to take, I don't want to say issue, that's not the right word, but you said this is, I think you said it was controversial. I think the judges in this situation have been pretty clear about what can and can't happen at this site. I don't think of our justice system as controversial. I thought their decision, which I've all read, were pretty clear, but that's just my thoughts on it. I understand the local residents are very passionate about it. All right, I don't have any more questions. Merci beaucoup.
Councillor Devine.
Thank you, Chair. So I will commend my colleague for being a fierce advocate for your ward. There is no doubt on that, and I'm impressed by that. But my concern here is it feels like we're setting a precedent that I know I've never ever assumed I could expect for any development in my ward. I can only imagine what the cost and resources would be if we set a precedent here, because surely it would not be the first time such a thing would be demanded. On the issue of To echo my colleague, on the issue of controversy, I can name any number of files in my ward that meet every single box, tick everything, cross every dot, every T. They meet all of our goals. It'll still be seen as controversial. So just a couple questions here for clarity on my sake. I heard somebody say that this would be about creating a separate page on our website. But from what I saw on that list of deliverables, this would be creating more than a page. It felt like it would be creating an entire process unique to this file or project. Is that correct?
So just to take a step back through the mayor, Council already directed us to take a different approach to this project with the very lengthy multi-clause motion that was passed by Council at the last Council meeting. So it is in the pursuant of delivering on that motion that Council's already passed that we are looking at this one. What this motion as laid out does is, yes, it would add extra transparency and a physical place with both regular city publication of information as well as in a newsletter and a engage page. But I would argue that if this had come through the normal process, there would have been public consultation and applications reviewed, and it would have ultimately had a city decision. This was decided by the OLT, and so yes, this is a different process than we would do for anything else, but I think that Council has already made that decision in your previous motion to handle this differently. The additional pieces in this motion also would mean through the normal work we would do in terms of reviewing the studies and plans and whatnot that comes forward from the proponent in order to clear the conditions, we would be looking to add to that the additional peer review. That is different than we do now, but I think it will also be spoken to in the response to Councillor Curry's inquiry, which was also tabled at a previous council meeting.
Thank you for that. So if this motion as it stands is a natural byproduct of what we passed recently, where I agree that we set aside, we carved out a unique process for that file subdivision. If this is a natural byproduct of that, for clarity, did the passing of that motion before, did the passing of that motion dictate precisely what we have before us today? Or is this just one possible outcome that came from that motion?
I don't think that one requires the other, but I do think that the extraordinary approach proposed here has to be looked at in the context of your earlier decision.
Yep, and I can understand that this falls within the spirit of that motion, and I guess I was trying to get clarity. By what we passed before, did we, by default, create this? Is this motion here, if we passed that motion previously, which set staff off on a path, is this motion here, was this motion basically drafted by staff, presented to the local councillor, see how the local councillor feels? Or is this a motion from local councillor seeking staff's approval?
Councillor Curry, did you want to maybe answer that?
Sorry, I wrote the motion, I sent it to staff. Yeah. Staff reviewed it all and said they were fine with it. We changed, I think, one clause, and here it is.
And thank you. And I can understand staff being fine with it because it falls within the spirit of what we passed before, although what we passed before did not necessarily dictate that we must have this here. Can I get a sense, I don't think you're going to be able to answer it, but if we were to pass all of what's in this motion here, can you give us any indication of what additional time, resources, costs would be associated with the preparation of all of these deliverables?
I can't estimate the costs. It would be an unbudgeted expense, clearly not what we had planned in our budget, but I can't give an estimate without sort of seeing the body of that work. And yeah.
If the motion we passed before, if we were not to pass this motion here, but we passed a previous motion that carved out unique considerations for that project, could we still achieve the outcomes of that other motion without passing this motion here today?
I think the city has raised expectations that for the community that the staff and council will respond in a different way to this project based on the last motion. And I think there's a lot of, I agree with the councillor, there's an incredible volume of information, a lot of misinformation or miscommunication and genuine questions that aren't answered yet. And so I do understand the intent behind this motion and as drafted.
So do I, but I don't think my question got answered there. What I want to know, whatever the former motion delivered as expectations, can those expectations be met if we do not pass this motion here today? Can they still be met? Can the general spirit and intentions of that other motion, can we still go along with that if we don't pass this here today?
I think the two motions ask staff to do two different things. And the motion originally, we still owe a response in terms of the tools available element, which I believe my colleagues in legal are preparing a response. But I think this is adding some other things that the councillor's asking us to look at.
If the deliverable of this motion would be a public-facing document, website, whatever, and knowing that residents by and large don't necessarily understand the subtle differences between the Canada Golf Links issue and the big project that's happening down the street on their block, but those residents see it just as controversial, can I ask, I'm not sure I can answer this, may I ask if what we end up doing here is setting in place a new process beyond DevApps, which is the uniform expectation for all residents, might other residents in other controversial areas facing other controversial projects start knocking on my door saying, hey, can I get the same thing, please? Is that a reasonable expectation?
I would argue most citizens don't understand the current process, let alone any changes to the process, but I take your point.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Tierney.
Great, thank you. And yeah, this is a tough one for sure. So I guess some of the questions I have on this, and I appreciate the separation of the 3 points. I think it's easy for 2 if there's no cost. And I just want to check on that. So if we're setting up a special site dans les villes d'Ottawa, le site web français, anglais, tous les communiqués.
We could use the website in French and English to communicate everything. Oh.
Would all these documents and everything already be created and you're just rehousing? So there's no cost to that, or is there translation costs? Like, I just want to see what precedent we're setting here, because I think we spend like almost $2 million in translation, which is great. We should spend more, but what costs are going to go into setting up this site outside of what we already have established?
Mayor, while we don't have specifics with respect to cost, I would characterize them with respect to the creation of the website as being, minimal and within our normal budget expense.
Yeah, and the website's easy. I could flip one on 5 minutes, but I'm talking about the documents that go within it. If you miss that part, there's a cost of translation. There's a cost to all these additional things. Would they'd be all translated already, correct?
Some of the engineering documents would not be translated, and they may not be translated like the format that we post them on our DevApps page. The plans and studies as they come in, I'd have to confirm, but I think often they're not translated because they're proprietary documents that are owned by the consultants and by the developers, as opposed to being our own city documents. So those I don't know that I would foresee us translating. If the city was the client and publishing those, I would want to check with our French language services, but there may be an expectation that they be translated as well.
Okay, I think we'd have to look at that to see if that's a requirement or not, because I don't want to go down that path. That creates a whole other issue. Just to the mover of the motion, have you approached the MOE? I mean, the Premier has been pretty steadfast in the support of working on this, but when I hear Mercury, and I'll go back to staff later on, that's a concern, but I just want to know, is this like an exclusive concern? Is this something that the province, like the Ministry of Environment, should be dealing with this, shouldn't they?
We have written to the Ministry of the Environment, so has our Medical Officer of Health and many residents and our MPPs and our MP. So yeah, there's been a lot of requests, and staff have engaged the Ministry of Environment, Conservation and Parks to ask them to look at this, because it is like the mercury contamination has been documented and presented to the OLT and is part of the conditions.
Okay, and these studies and everything, it looks like you got great community interaction. Do you have a funding source that could pay for this, or are we kind of committing money here to do that? Because the first two on communications is easy if there's no cost implications, but we're spending a lot of money on this project, and I'm starting to get a lot of feedback on it. Is there any opportunity or a funding source that you could think of that could pay for that? It'd make it easier on that point number 3.
I don't know that the community should be paying to protect its own safety. That's the challenge here, I think.
Okay. Do we have any other sites that are contaminated by mercury that we've dealt with this in the past? And what has been our approach?
Mayor, we often have contaminated sites. We have a whole brownfields program that supports redevelopment on brownfield sites. I apologize to the councillor. I cannot speak to the individual contaminants and whether they have mercury or petrocarbon contamination or dry cleaner fluid. Like, there's a variety of contamination, and I can't speak to that specifically. I can say that mercury is not it's not one of the most common contaminants that we run into, for sure.
Yeah, and we've dealt with it before, though. And who pays for that aspect of things right now? If we run into a site, is it the province that gets involved? Like, obviously, this seems weird. We're asking for money for special reports on this, so I'm just trying to understand.
So I would say that as it relates to the mercury issue, we are working on a response to Councillor Curry's inquiry, which will spell out roles and responsibilities and how we address mercury. What this report, what is referenced here in this motion, is about all the full range of reports that might be required, reports related to drainage, reports related to landscaping. Like, there'll be a number of different things that the consultant will have to work on for the proponent in order for them to clear the conditions. So this is not limited or specific to the mercury issue, but we will answer a lot of the questions you're asking about mercury in the inquiry.
Okay, great. Yeah, this isn't our first mercury rodeo. We figured that out. We've had other hazardous waste. I think we should paint them with the same brush, knowing that this is going to cost a lot of money. So at this point, unless we find a funding source by the time we get there, I'll support the communications. Anything that we've already tested to a good friend and colleague, I'm just concerned about what the escalating costs on this is going to be, because I'm getting a lot of feedback. Why is this neighborhood being treated different than others? I understand it. I represent a very affluent community in a certain area too. It's hard for me to go back to them and say, yeah, I guess it's different there than here. And it's a big, big challenge. So thank you for your time.
Thank you. Maybe just, Councillor Gower, if you don't mind me asking a question before you go, if that's all right. Yeah, just because the communications thing has come up a couple of times. This isn't, correct me if I'm wrong, but this is not a choice between, are we going to communicate with the residents in that area, or are we not going to communicate with them? And there's a cost to what's included in this motion, and the other path, there's no cost. We're communicating with the residents. They're writing emails to you and to the councillor, and you're having to respond to those. Putting up a website with a bunch of frequently asked questions on it and responding to those questions might actually be a cheaper, more efficient way of communicating with those residents. Is that fair to say?
Yes, Mayor, I agree with that. That's why we support that motion, because we think that people are seeking information from a lot of different sources, as the councillors pointed out.
Yeah, so this actually could save time and money in the long run. Okay, Councillor Gower.
Okay, thanks. This is not an average private development. It's 175 acres. And if you take all the tentacles of where the golf course goes and everything into neighborhoods, it's a neighborhood that's about the same size as the entire Byward Market and Lower Town, everything north of Rideau Street. It's huge. And I think what the councillor is just looking for is communication, due diligence, and transparency for residents. On top of that, I think the developer is being antagonistic here. There's another factor. Does it set a precedence? Probably it does. And so, councillors, if any of you have a 175-acre development site that is disrupting your entire ward, come make the case to council why you should get similar treatment. I would support you on that, I think. Yeah, so I'm happy to second this motion. And I think we got to have Councillor Curry's back and the residents of Canada North. We got to show support for them as well. Thanks, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Gower. Councillor Brown?
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor, and I couldn't have said it better than Councillor Gower. What's being requested here is support for a community that is going through an odd process. They're asking for support for enhanced communication. They're asking for support to ensure that their voices are heard. I don't understand why council would be opposed to providing that support. So certainly supportive. I just wanted to make sure I got on the record to say that this is something all of council should be supporting. And yes, if I ever have a 175-acre development, I'll certainly come here to ask for your support. Thank you.
Councillor Hill.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. And I'm going to say very similar to my colleague that just went before me. This is a unique circumstance. It does require a unique perspective. It does require additional oversight. And I appreciate very much the local councillor's advocacy on this. I think the approach she is taking is appropriate. It's legitimate. Staff have indicated support to this. We are on a different trajectory as per what our General Manager of Plans indicated from the last council meeting, and I think we need to support our Canada residents. It's the right thing to do. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Bradley?
Thanks, Mayor. The last time we had Councillor Curry's motion, the previous motion, I had asked if there was an upset limit to which we would spend on this file, and I don't think that there was a response to that. That was a number. So is there an upset limit to which we would spend on these third-party reviews?
As I said, these are not in our budget, so they would have to be seen as a pressure, and there is no upset limit in this motion.
And so it says that we would seek a third-party review for every individual substantive submission. So could you sort of articulate to me what would be considered a substantive submission and how many we could expect on a file of this scope and scale?
Chair, a typical subdivision, as we get into detailed design, would have a variety of plans and studies associated with it, including stormwater engineering, sanitary servicing, water servicing, landscape and grading plans. You know, there's a variety of plans and studies that go to support this.
So at least a dozen substantive studies.
That's fair.
And so the motion also says that every single substantive study that has a third-party review would be listed as an IPD on a committee agenda. Is that staff's understanding of the motion?
That's correct.
And I suspect, given the ward councillor's advocacy on this, that she would likely attempt to lift onto every agenda. That's a lot of committee time on this file to discuss every third-party review of every substantive submission for a plan of subdivision. I don't know, again, I know this is an extraordinary development and I empathize with the community and with the councillor. She's done an amazing job advocating for her community, but the amount of staff time and committee resources and taxpayer dollars that we're spending seems really extreme compared to what we would on any other major file in the city. And I think that the precedent we are setting is strong here, and that all of us, as we are working or as we all support intensification, are having difficult files in our communities, are faced with resident concerns every day. And I think that this would be the new expectation, and that people would know that we could ask for this. And again, that would be a significant amount of resources that we would expend on every single file if we agree to support Councillor Curry's motion today. I'm totally in favor of setting up a website. I get it. I can imagine the correspondence that you're getting. We've seen it as well. I'm totally fine with that. But in terms of hiring an independent third-party reviewer for every single substantive submission, the cost to that with no upset limit, with no funding source for it, that would be a pressure. I can't support that. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Kelly.
I will be supporting Councillor Curry's motion today, but I want to just say one thing, is that I certainly wish that this had been the attitude of council when a large battery energy storage system was proposed in my ward, and am expecting that if we do pass this, that moving forward, we will use these tools more readily as a council, and I would hope that you would all think about that for a little bit when contemplating this vote, and I hope that I will have your support in the future should another file such as a industrial scale battery energy storage system comes to Ward 5. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Hughley.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I too will be supporting my colleague on this motion. I have a question for staff, though. The issue of mercury has come up a fair bit today. It's certainly being discussed in the community that the potential toxic waste that could be involved in this site. If the reports show it's to the extreme, would that not be something that you would have to look at multiple sites across the city? Like it's my understanding is the mercury is from the golf course use. That's what's created the mercury. Well, we have a lot of golf courses in the city. So are we going to start applying the same thing across the golf courses? Because that's quite, for all the houses that surround this golf course, if they're next to mercury contamination, and we're talking about stormwater management in that area, that just means the mercury is going to move around. So what's the plan here if it turns out to be heavily impacted by mercury?
So through the mayor, the short answer is that this is an area regulated by the provincial government as it relates to the Environmental Protection Act and the need for what's called a record of site condition that confirms that it's safe to put a more sensitive use on an area that has contamination. And there's a whole process behind that. The inquiry that Councillor Curry brought forward that we are finishing up on asked us to explain the process, but also beyond that, what else are we doing as the city, not just what the province is responsible for. That inquiry is intended to come to you very shortly. We are attempting to bring it forward to the March Planning and Housing Committee meeting in early March, and so that maybe I'll leave the bigger, deeper conversation around that. We were working on that across several departments and with our colleague, the medical officer of health.
Thank you for that. So if I understand you correctly, you're going to come back in March over this mercury thing. But my question is, are we looking at all the other sites across the city that would be using the same chemicals and the impact on neighboring houses? Like even if they don't go ahead with this, if there's a lot of mercury there, that impacts the value of every house around there. And what are we going to do to protect them?
So the requirement of the proponent is to address the mercury on site in a way that does not harm surrounding sites, and that they need to, in order to put a residential use, which is a more sensitive use, they need to address that to the satisfaction of the province in the record of site condition process. So I believe that will be answered in the inquiry that we provide, and then that conversation can happen at the Planning and Housing Committee.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Brockington.
Just very briefly, thank you, Mayor. I have received, I think, as others, some correspondence this week from Canada North residents about their surprise that work has been undertaken in recent days on the golf course. What type of communication channels are open now between the councillor's office, the city, and the property owner with respect to work that's being undertaken? Are we aware that this work was going to happen? Is this work permitted as far as what they can and cannot do? And how is information being shared with the community so the community is aware of what's going on? I'm not sure if staff can answer or councillor.
So maybe I'll start and the councillor may choose to add in. So right now we're getting a number of questions directly from residents as well as filtered through the councillor who's sharing that information in real time. We've responded to the councillor and our responses are going back out to the community through the councillor and her newsletters, as well as directly in conversation with those who've asked some questions. But I'll admit we're not responding very quickly given the volume on the residents who are writing in. A lot of the answers are in what we're sharing back with the councillor. In terms of the work that is ongoing on the site, it is what we knew was going to take place. It's related to testing and some an engineering work that they're doing to meet some of the conditions of their subdivision agreement. I'll admit that the equipment they're using is a lot larger than probably most people expected in the description of what they were going to do, given the rocky nature of the site. But we have had staff on site to monitor, and we have also the city has hired a third-party engineering firm to monitor this work and evaluate it against best practice.
Okay, I appreciate that. And the stipulation about respecting or honoring city easements, that's not been breached at this point, is that correct?
At this point, no.
Okay, fair enough. Just finally, I think legitimate questions have been asked about whether or not there's an upper cap to how much we will allocate to the third party for legal review. Do you have any comment on that? Like, at what point would you feel uncomfortable and say, I think I need some additional discretion or approval from council because we've now passed $1 million or some threshold? What does staff think is an appropriate level before you would come back to us?
So, Mr. Mayor, pursuant to the delegation of authority bylaw, I'm directed to use the most efficient use of both internal and external legal services. And I'm doing that in this particular regard. My office has obviously in-house lawyers that are assisting. But because of the unique issues, and I won't repeat them, I have been required to retain external legal counsel specific to the environmental issues that are unique to this particular file. And certainly if there is an issue that presents itself working with the GM, where there's a pressure that requires further attention, it will be something that obviously we will report back through the appropriate committees and to council.
Sorry, I didn't catch the end there.
Sorry, I wavered off. Mr. Mayor, I would report back to committee and council if there's a significant budget pressure.
Okay, because I think that will provide some relief to my colleagues, including myself, that it's not a blank check. In the same respects, I support the fact that you may need external assistance. I think that's normal, especially if it's technical assistance. But I do think that we're all recognizing today that there isn't an infinite ceiling to what can be spent, and that you will use your professional judgment of when you need to come back. So I appreciate that. So I will support the motion that's before us today. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Brockington. Councillor Curry, did you want to say anything to wrap up, or are you good?
I'd just like a quick wrap up. Did you have a comment at all? Or?
No, go ahead.
Councillors, thank you very much for all of your comments and your very good questions. I would say this is, and I think other people have said it, this is a very, very unique situation. I don't know of any file in any of your wards, and maybe anywhere in this province, where a city has taken a development file to the Supreme Court of Canada twice. Twice. Like, let me know if there's one in your wards where that's happened, and we can compare notes. But that, to my understanding, has never happened before, and it's for a good reason. As I said in earlier comments, this particular piece of property was always expected to be the green space for the community. That's the way the deal went at the beginning, and then that's how the community was built after that, right? And it was determined that this 175 acres would be the stormwater management plan for Canada Lakes. So the city is in a very challenging situation right now, because what we've always relied on as a stormwater management plan for neighboring communities is potentially going to be disrupted. There are covenants that run with this land that are still good for another at least 10 years that were put in place 30 years ago because this area is the stormwater management plan for the community. So the risk to the city is flooding. And that's our serious concern. How can water be distributed in a different way? And that is a big risk for all of us. I don't know if I mentioned this last time, but in my inquiry, I talked about the duty of care and using the precautionary principle. If you're a member of any college, you have to do that naturally. If you're a member of the military, it's every day you talk about duty of care and precautionary principle. But every single one of us here sitting on this council has to exercise a duty of care and use the precautionary principle when it comes to resident safety and health, and for the protection of the city itself. The liability for the city itself here is great. So even if you're sort of thinking, well, the residents are one thing. You can actually think about your role as a municipal governor for city liability. The lawsuits that could come from this, if this is not done properly and the city isn't extra careful, are also a huge concern. I have had residents asking me, who should I sue? And I don't have the answer to that, because residents' houses right now are shaking and they've had no time to do the pre-construction survey that was distributed to them, with only hours for them to act. It's actually quite shocking and disrespectful, and I think really unsafe. So this motion asks for a lot of different things to ensure that the community has full knowledge of what's actually going on, and the city is less liable because it will communicate with those residents and indicate that it has, and it allows the city to be demonstrating that it is using its duty of care and using the precautionary principle here because of the flooding and the mercury contamination. So I think this is unique to everyone here. I would say that Montreal has made a decision to not have building on any of its golf courses because of the mercury contamination and because of the stormwater management that they provide. So I would look for your support, and I think the residents of Canada North would be very happy to see that their voices have been heard and that their health and welfare is being considered. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Curry. So my interpretation of the motion is that items 3 and 4, the be it further resolved clauses 3 and 4 go together. They're related to each other. Would you agree with that?
We'll get the
3 and 4,
motion
3 and 4 go together, right? Are they different?
One is about reporting to planning and housing, and the other is that independent technical review.
But is it not about is the reporting and item in the 4th item about the third one?
It also includes the regular updates that are referred in clause 2.
Okay. Okay, so what I would suggest then is we vote on item 3 separately. Is there any other clause that people want to vote on separately? No? Okay, so we'll have a recorded vote on the 3rd, be it for the resolved, and then we'll vote on everything else.
Councillor Tierney.
No.
Councillor King.
Yes.
Councillor Brown.
Yes.
Councillor Gower.
Yes.
Councillor Skalski.
Yes.
Councillor Luloff.
Yes.
Councillor Plante.
No.
Councillor Menard.
No.
Councillor Hill.
Yes.
Councillor Desroches.
Wait.
Councillor Carr.
Yes.
Councillor Dudas.
Absolutely.
Councillor Lowe.
Yes.
Councillor Bradley.
No.
Councillor Kelly.
Yes.
Councillor Troster.
Yes.
Councillor Brockington.
Yes.
Councillor Hubley.
Yes.
Councillor Johnson. Councillor Leeper.
No.
Councillor Devine.
No.
Councillor Curry.
Yes.
Councillor Kavanaugh.
Yes.
Councillor Kitts.
Yes.
Mayor Sutcliffe.
Yes.
18 yeas, 6 nays.
Thank you. Do we need a recorded vote on the rest of it, or is that carried?
Carried.
Oh.
Dissent.
Okay. 2 dissents. Is that right? Councillor Devine, Councillor Plante. Anyone else? Okay. Thank you. Let's move to notices of motion. Councillor King has a motion on Black Maternal Health and Reproductive Justice Month. Councillor King.
Thank you so much, Your Worship. Seconded by Councillor Troster. Whereas African, Caribbean, and Black communities in Canada experience disproportionate maternal and reproductive health outcomes and ongoing barriers to accessing appropriate maternal and reproductive health care, reflecting persistent inequalities within healthcare systems. And whereas reproductive justice is a human rights framework affirming bodily autonomy, access to safe and dignified care, and the ability to parent children in safe and supported communities. And whereas municipalities play a role in advancing population health and equity through public health programming, community partnerships, and anti-racism initiatives. And whereas Ottawa Public Health reports that more than 10,000 babies are born annually in Ottawa, with approximately 1 in 5 new mothers reporting postpartum mental health concerns, underscoring the importance of culturally responsive community-based supports. And whereas research and community-based evidence demonstrates that culturally grounded, community-led approaches improve maternal health experiences and outcomes for Black families, and whereas the City of Ottawa proclaimed April as Black Maternal Health and Reproductive Justice Month in both 2024 and 2025, and continued momentum has emerged across Ontario municipalities, and whereas establishing a municipal recognition strengthens visibility, accountability, and Council's commitment to advancing maternal health equity, therefore be it resolved that the City of Ottawa formally establish April as Black Maternal Health and Reproductive Justice Month, and be it further resolved that Council requests the Mayor issue a proclamation recognizing Black Maternal Health and Reproductive Justice Month beginning in April 2026.
Thank you, Councillor King. Councillor Gower has a commemorative naming notice of motion.
Thank you. Whereas on July 10th, 2024, City Council approved the commemorative naming policy, and whereas in keeping with its powers set out in the Municipal Act, Council may assign a commemorative name by resolution, notwithstanding the provisions included in the commemorative naming policy. And whereas John Curry lived in Stittsville for over 40 years and served as the longtime editor, writer, and publisher of the Stittsville News, as well as an avid local historian and author. And whereas John Curry was a dedicated school board trustee for over 20 years and received the Provincial Award of Merit in 2018 from the Ontario Catholic School Trustees Association. And whereas John Curry was a founding member of the Goulburn Museum, the first chair of the Holy Spirit Parish Council, and a member of the Knights of Columbus, as well as an honorary member of the Stittsville Rotary Club and the Stittsville District Lions Club. And whereas John Brummel lived in Stittsville for almost 45 years and worked for decades as a writer and photographer for the Stittsville News, and whereas John Brummel received the Mayor's City Builder Award in 2017 for his work at the Stittsville News, as well as his involvement in the community. And whereas John Brummel was director of the Richmond Fair Board, a member of the Goulburn Township Historical Society, the Stittsville District Lions Club, and the Goulburn Horticultural Society, as well as integral in establishing the Stittsville Rotary Club, where he remained an affiliate member. And whereas John Brummel and John Curry were known throughout the community as the Two Johns, who were longtime best friends for 40 years and worked side by side at the Stittsville News and worked tirelessly to document the community and tell the stories of people living in Stittsville and Goulburn. Therefore, be it resolved that City Council approve the commemorative naming of Cope Park, located at 785 Cope Drive, to Brummel Curry Park in honor of John Brummel and John Curry, in recognition of their outstanding service and enduring impact on the community of Stittsville and the City of Ottawa. And be it further resolved that an appropriate stand and plaque be installed displaying the name and a brief history of the contributions of both Johns. And be it further resolved that all costs related to the production and installation of the stand, plaque, and subsequent event be funded through the Councillor's Office. And be it further resolved that all costs related to updating the park sign be funded through the Ward 6 Stittsville Cash and Lieu Fund. And be it further resolved that all text for signage and commemorative plaques shall be bilingual and subject to approval by the General Manager of Recreation, Cultural, and Facilities Services. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Gower. Councillor Brockington on the Moonies Bay parking lot.
Thank you, Mayor. Whereas the St. Elias Antiochian Orthodox Parish located at 750 Ridgewood is expecting significant attendance during the Orthodox Easter period that will result in overflow parking needs that cannot be accommodated on their site. Whereas the parish has requested the ability for parishioners to use the Moonies Bay parking lot during the Easter season in keeping with past arrangements. Whereas with 1,700 families in the parish, there have been community concerns with accommodating overflow parking on local streets during the Orthodox Easter period. Whereas parking in city parks for unrelated uses is generally not permitted if it is unrelated to use of the park. whereas Parks and Facilities Bylaw 2004-276 provides the general hours of operation of parks from 5 a.m. to 11 p.m. Therefore, be it resolved that Council approve the issuance of a park permit to allow the St. Elias Parish to use the Moonies Bay Park parking lot during their Orthodox Easter events on the following dates and times. Sunday, April 5th, 2026 from 9:30 a.m. to 1:30 p.m. Friday, April 10th, 2026 from 5 p.m. to 9:30 p.m. Saturday, April 11th, 2026 from 9 p.m. to 2 a.m. the following day. And be it further resolved that Council waive the associated park rental fee. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Brockington. I have a motion. As you know, I don't typically introduce motions myself, but with the concurrence of my colleagues, I'd like to introduce this motion. Whereas Black History Ottawa is a registered Canadian charity dedicated to advancing education by increasing the public's knowledge and appreciation of Black history, and 2026 marks its 40th anniversary, having been first formed as the Black History Month Committee in 1986. And whereas the history of Ottawa's Black community dates back over 2 centuries, beginning with early settlers such as London Oxford in 1800 in the Ottawa-Gatineau region, and the first recorded Black family in Bytown, Perry Adams and Henrietta Joyce, in 1844, followed by contributions from figures like Paul Barber in the mid-19th century, and ongoing growth through immigration, resilience in the face of challenges, and trailblazing achievements in community leadership. And whereas this legacy includes key milestones for persons of African descent in Ottawa, such as Hubert Waugh, Ottawa's first Black police officer, June Gervin, Ottawa's first Black supervisory officer for the Ministry of Education, Isabel Granger, the first Black female police officer, and Ralston King, first Black city councillor, highlighting contributions of persons of African descent to the city's fabric. And whereas on March 21st, 2018, the City of Ottawa marked the International Day for the Elimination of Racial Discrimination with a proclamation launching local actions aligned with the United Nations International Decade for People of African Descent, leading to systemic policy adoptions across the municipality to promote recognition, justice, and development for people of African descent. And whereas the main objectives of the decade are to, 1, adopt and strengthen national, regional, and international legal frameworks according to the Durban Declaration and Program of Action and the International Convention on the Elimination of All Forms of Racial Discrimination, and to ensure their full and effective implementation. 2, promote a greater knowledge of and respect for the diverse heritage, culture, and contribution of people of African descent to the development of societies. And 3, promote respect, protection, and fulfillment of all human rights and fundamental freedoms by people of African descent as recognized in the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. And whereas our city has demonstrated a community-wide systemic commitment to the objectives of the decade through the adoption of its first anti-racism strategy on June 22, 2022, a 5-year plan to proactively identify and remove systemic barriers in city policies, programs, and services, addressing racism and promoting equity. And whereas the city is committed to promoting greater knowledge and respect for the diverse heritage, culture, and contribution of people of African descent to the development of Ottawa through partnerships with Black History Ottawa for events such as Black History Month, Black History in Ottawa Streets Initiative, and other programs to celebrate and preserve the legacies of residents of African descent to Ottawa. Therefore, be it resolved that the Mayor proclaim the City of Ottawa as a human rights community, recognizing our community's commitment to uphold the principles of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights and to foster an inclusive environment in which the objectives of the decade are the cultural norm, freed from discrimination. And be it further resolved that the City of Ottawa, supported by Black History Ottawa, identify 40 distinguished Black Ottawa residents to be commemorated over the next decade for their significant legacy contributions to the community, starting with the following people: Dr. Horace Alexis, civil rights activist Minnie Jean Brown Trickey, Professor Cynthia Bled, child and human rights activist June Gervin, Ottawa's first Black City Councillor Ralston King, diplomat and author Meruth Sarsfield, and journalist and writer Ewart Walters. Thank you, colleagues. Councillor Leeper.
Thanks. I'll be bringing a relatively routine demo control. Therefore, be it resolved that Council exempt 139 Parkdale and 122 Forward Avenue from demolition control, allowing the owner to proceed directly to demolition permit issuance at the discretion of Building Code Services.
Thank you. Motion to introduce bylaws, Councillor Leeper.
That the bylaws listed on the agenda under motion to introduce bylaws, 3 readings be read and passed.
Is that carried? Confirmation bylaw, Councillor Leeper.
That the following bylaw be read and passed to confirm the proceedings of the council meeting of February 25th, 2026.
Is that carried? Inquiries, Councillor Brockington.
Thank you, Mayor. The frequency of panhandling and volume of panhandlers at major intersections in Ottawa introduces a number of safety issues for road users. Would city staff compile data from 311 SRs and other relevant sources for calendar year 2025 to identify the top 10 intersections and/or roads where panhandling has taken place or the public have identified safety concerns? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Brockington. Are there any other inquiries? Motion to adjourn, Councillor Leeper.
That the proceedings of the City Council meeting of February 25th, 2026.
Is that carried?
Adjourned.
Thank you, everyone. Merci.
Good afternoon. Bonjour à tous. Thank you for joining us for today's media availability. Merci de vous joindre à nous pour le point de presse d'aujourd'hui. I will now invite each agency in reverse alphabetical order to ask their questions. You may ask one question with a follow-up. Par ordre alphabétique inverse, j'invite maintenant chaque organisme à poser une question et une question de suivi. On va commencer par Frédéric Pépin, Radio-Canada.
Bonjour, Monsieur le maire.
Bonjour.
Question par rapport à
Radio-Canada.
l'accident qui a eu lieu ce matin.
About the accident that took place this morning at Rideau and Coburg, one person lost their life. What information do you have on this? Well, it's quite tragic. It's hard to hear such news. All our thoughts go to the victim and her family, his or her family. And there were other victims too. I hope they're fine. It's really difficult to hear such things.
Sure. Yeah, I was shocked when I heard that news. It's a tragic story. I don't know all the details yet, obviously, but for something like that to happen on the streets of Ottawa is very difficult to hear. And all of my thoughts are with the victim and his family, and with the other victims who were injured. And I hope they're able to recover quickly.
Au sujet de la sécurité, les agents spéciaux
About
dossiers
the
transport,
special constable, you had a lot of debate on that today, and the province is consulting on that issue. Why do you think it'd be important to give that power to special constable? I'd like to hear Sabrina or Mr. Charter on that. Why is it important? What would it bring? What additional thing would it bring to the network? Well, residents express concerns about the security on OC Transpo. They've seen many things on the trains, the buses. So we need to have all possible powers to face these challenges. So, as you said, it's a provincial decision. It's not up to the city. But it's an opportunity to have, for those special constables, to have powers to habilitate them to find a solution to some situations. It's not up to us, as I said, but I agree with the province that there's a lot of concerns regarding the security on our transit system. So it's important to find solutions.
Oh, I think, yeah, I think I can
Yeah,
like that in English.
what I hear from residents is that they're concerned about safety and security on buses and trains, that they've witnessed incidents that have been of concern to them, that have caused them worry. And so we need to have all the tools that we can at our disposal in order to manage that situation. And this isn't our decision. It's not our legislation. It's a provincial matter. But we're indicating our support for having more tools available to special constables so that they're able to do whatever is necessary to keep our public transit system safe, as our residents would expect.
Je ne sais pas si Sabrina peut commenter là-dessus
Oui,
en
oui.
français sur.
Sabrina, can you say a few more words on that in French? What more would it bring to those special constables? Thanks for the question. Yes, it will add a tool for the special constables. We hear a lot from the residents that there are consumptions of drugs, and special constables would have an additional tool to intervene. With this change of the legislation, we want to thank the province that provided us some funding to help for the public safety on the transit system.
We'll now go to Haydon Hall at the Ottawa Citizen.
Ottawa Citizen, merci. Toujours au sujet d'OC Transpo et la motion du conseiller Hill. Peut-être que Troy pourra en parler. Êtes-vous d'accord avec cette idée d'une vérification du train, de l'eau train? Et merci de la question. Oui, tout à fait d'accord avec cette vérification. Il est important pour nous de faire preuve de transparence et j'ai bien apprécié le dialogue qu'on a eu au Conseil sur le choix du moment. C'est une bonne initiative. Deuxième question pour Marcia. Au sujet du rapport Hansen, il porte surtout sur la densification et l'aménagement sur des terrains en zone verte. Alors, au sujet de l'élargissement des limites urbaines. Mais merci de la question. Le rapport Hansen a été fait pour nous aider avec les projections démographiques et identifier le type de logement et les prévisions en matière d'emploi aussi pour voir ce que l'on devrait planifier. Ce rapport ne prend pas de position quant à l'élargissement ou non des limites urbaines. C'est un processus en 3 étapes. Nous en sommes qu'à la première étape. La prochaine se fera à la fin d'avril quand on reviendra au comité et au conseil avec des critères que l'on devrait prendre en
should play a part in that analysis. And then ultimately, at the beginning of 2027, we'll come back with a growth plan strategy. So we are not at that stage yet. And that's the type of research that we will be doing over the next several months.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next up, we have Cameron Mahler, CBC.
Good afternoon. Does this motion to support the provincial legislation passing mean that the authorities will automatically be granted to the transit special constables if it's, again, passed at Queen's Park? Or does it have to come back to the city?
Thank you for the question. It would still need to go to the Ottawa Police Services and through legal services to be added as one of the authorities that our special constables could enforce through our memorandum of understanding with the Ottawa Police Services.
Perfect. And I think this question is also probably for transit staff. The president of Ontario's Special Constables Association noted that they support this legislation from the province, but they also noted that people who consume drugs publicly may be unpredictable. My question is, what kind of training will be provided to these special constables to deal with that, and if it will involve weapons training?
Thank you for the question. As you may know, our special constables are sworn peace officers, which means they have the powers of a police officer on or in relation to transit property, so they undergo a robust training program. If the amendments to the act that the province has proposed would be approved and it goes through all the procedures, then the Ontario Police College, we anticipate, would update their mandated curriculum that we are required to train on, and we train our special constables on. So while our special constables already today are drug and seizure procedures, that's under the Federal Controlled Drugs and Substances Act. So this new act would require them to receive additional training to address the provincial changes.
And does that include weapons training, sorry? That you are aware of?
Thank you for the question. So our special constables do undergo already today use of force training.
Thank you. This concludes today's media availability. Ceci conclut le point de presse d'aujourd'hui. Thank you.
Oui.
One more question?
Oui, si je peux poser une question à M. le maire sur le projet de tramway à Gatineau.
Oui.
Il y a encore des problèmes.
About the tram project in Gatineau.
About the project for Gatineau in case, and it's Quebec might be withdrawing its support. I think that you have also said that it was important for all the transport in the region. Do you think that this is going to change things? And do you think that perhaps the project could actually see the light of day? Madame Amilcar has a lot of experience when it comes to public transport in the Ottawa-Gatineau region, and I hope that she will be able to make that difference. But once again, I share her concern of with Maud Marquette-Bissonneau, the mayor of Gatineau, because this is an important change, and the tramway could be very important for Gatineau and the entire region.
And I continue to support Madame Marquet-Bissonnette. And we need commitments on the part of the Quebec government to make sure that this project goes ahead and that these changes don't represent any delay in the process, because this project is actually very important, not just for Gatineau, but for the entire region. Thank you.